order this meeting of the Town of Los Gatos Council of March 1st. If I could start off with a roll call, please.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Sayoc.
I'm here.
Councilmember Hudas.
Here.
Councilmember Badami.
Here.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Rennie.
And I'm here. Next, if you could roll our meeting protocol video, please.
The public is welcome to participate at Town Council meetings, understanding that the purpose of the meetings is to conduct the important business of the town in an efficient and effective manner. At each meeting, the following expectations of civil conduct shall apply. 1. For the benefit of the entire community, the Town of Los Gatos asks that all speakers follow the town's meeting guidelines by treating everyone with respect and dignity. This is done by following meeting guidelines set forth in state law, in the town code, and on the cover sheet of the council agenda. 2. The town embraces diversity and strongly condemns hate speech and offensive hateful language or racial intolerance of any kind at council meetings. 3. Town council and staff are well aware of the public's right to disagree with their professional opinion on various town issues. However, antisocial behavior, slander, hatred, and bigotry statements are completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form at Town Council meetings. 4. All public comments at the Town Council meeting must pertain to items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the town and shall not contain slanderous statements, hatred, and bigotry against non-public officials. 5. The town will go through the following steps if a disturbance results from a member of the public not following these rules. If participating remotely, town staff may mute the individual with an explanation for the record of why muting occurred consistent with this policy. If participating in person, the mayor may call a recess for violation of this policy, resulting in the immediate cessation of the audio and video recording and the council exiting the chamber. Staff will determine if the individual should be removed or if all members of the public should leave, depending on the extent of the disturbance. In the event that all public members exit, only the press would be allowed back in the meeting. Once the individual or individuals leave, the council would return to the chamber and the mayor would resume the meeting. Persons disrupting a council meeting may be cited for violation of the California Penal Code Section 403. These expectations of conduct also apply to meetings of all town boards, committees, and commissions.
Okay, thank you. We are going to start with presentations to our 2022 STEM winners. I believe we're going to have 6 of them. If I could ask them to turn on their cameras now, I will explain the award and the commendation and name all of them and their projects. So to start with, in 1960, the Santa Clara Valley Science and Engineering Fair Association was established to awaken more students to the wonder and power of science and engineering. And STEM means science, technology, engineering, and math. The mission of this association is to hold annual synopsis championship to showcase middle and high school students in Santa Clara County who will become our future scientists and technology experts, engineers, and mathematicians. They will each get a commentation with this on it, and then the specifics of each person's award. First is Cameron Nicole Boyce Kim, so Nicole's middle name, Boyceo Kim from Los Gatos High, and her award is an honorable mention. Welcome, Cameron. The project title for your project was the effects of PM 2.5 concentrations on Drosophila with and without microbiota concerning glucose metabolization. Sounds like a very good project. We know that the effects of PM 2.5 particles are really bad on people, and those are produced by diesel and other sources. So that sounds like a really great project. Next is Rodrigo Cantu Valdez, also from Los Gatos High. His award is the IEEE Electrotechnology, and his project is using aerogel to increase efficiency and power output by lowering panel temperature in photovoltaic Brett cells. Congratulations on your award. Next is Letizia Pastori, also Los Gatos High, and she received an honorable mention for her project titled Testing the Effect of Indole-3 Carbinol on the aggregation of DHS-3 protein in C. elegans strain LU1, I guess it is. These are going way over my head, and I'm an engineering major. Congratulations on your award. And next is Ferris Raza, also from Los Gatos High, who got the IBM award for his project titled Development of Motion Tracking Gloves to Automate the Real-Time Translation of American Sign Language to Spoken English. Sounds like a very worthwhile project. Congratulations on your award. Next is Pujita Tangirala from St. Francis High School. Award was an honorable mention for her project titled Modeling Atmospheric Band Measurements to Enhance Precision of Stellar Line of Sight Velocities. Also sounds very technical to me. Congratulations on your award. And then, oops, let's see, I got one more late person. I'm sorry, let me get to the name here. It was Anaya Aswin, and her project, I guess she won second in biological science fair qualification. She's also Los Gatos High, and her project was the effects of B2 vitamins on depression. So congratulations to everybody. It sounds like great technology stuff to already be diving into at the high school level. So the town of Los Gatos and our council congratulate you, and glad that it looks like our future is going to be in good hands.
And Mayor, I've just become aware that in the attendees list is Clara Hansen. She was also on the list, but was not on the list of names we were given that would be joining us tonight. She was from Los Gatos High School and won honorable mention, and she's in the 11th grade for examining the effects of curcumin and olive oil on neurofibromatosis type 1 in Drosophila. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the last word.
We got lots of Drosophila stuff. If only we knew what it was. But I feel like we're in good hands anyway. So congratulations to Clara also.
And students, you can go ahead and turn your cameras off. If you're going to stay for the meeting, I'll move you back to attendee. Otherwise, you're free to leave the meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Congratulations. Okay, so next on our agenda is council manager matters. I'll start with Councilmember Hughes.
Thank you. It's been actually quite busy, so I need to bring up my list. On February 16th, I worked with the subcommittee of the Senior Services Committee on benchmarking, and we identified a number of communities with which to compare Los Gatos in the area of senior services, and that group is off and running on doing this benchmarking. On the 18th, I attended the State of the Valley Zoom session, and I also attended the SV at Home Council Roundtable. On the 19th, I met with a group of folks with disabilities who use wheelchairs. And let's see, then missed a Monday here. Oh, there it is. On the 22nd, I attended as really just as a listener, a description of the objective standards that the town is working with a consultant to develop. And then on the 24th, I attended the swearing in of our police chief, Jamie Field. It was a very wonderful community, very well attended session welcoming our police chief. Then I participated in the Santa Clara County Emergency Operations Council meeting, where we got reports on COVID, drought, and other issues that could turn into actual emergencies for the county. And then I participated the same day in a very nice ribbon cutting at the tasting house. And then this week, yesterday, I participated in the Senior Services Committee meeting. And that's it.
Sounds great. Thank you for all your efforts. Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. First of all, I remember what Drosophila is from my high school biology, and it's a fruit fly. So with their quick reproduction rate, they're great for studying, and I commend these students. I attended a lot of the same meetings as Council Member Hudes. In addition, on the 17th, I participated in the Housing Element Advisory Board meeting with a discussion of next steps and public participation in the balance tool. I don't know if our town manager will be reviewing it, but on our town website, we've got a variety of links. And there are a lot of ways for the public to continue to participate with the housing element in terms of learning how to use the Better Balance tool, looking at sites where we can put housing. And there are some surveys about affordable housing and about housing experiences. So I encourage all residents to become more involved with this. There's a large role people can play. I did attend the State of the Valley and the SV at Home Council Roundtable, which was with a variety of local council members discussing housing element progress, challenges all of our communities are facing, what are some resources, and how SB 9 ties into there. On the 21st and the 28th, the usual Monday morning, I attended Democracy Tent. A week ago Monday, the discussion centered primarily around cannabis. And this past Monday was about senior services and the good work that the committee is doing and what members of the community are looking for. And there's a survey about senior services. Attending the Chief Field swearing in ceremony, I would say this was a really proud day for our community. I feel like we have a strong advocate for community policing. And I was pleased that Chief Field shared the words that she shared on that day with all of the council members. I put them on my Facebook page. So if anybody wants to see what our chief has said and the commitment she has made for our community, to her department, and to the rest of the staff, they're there, and it's just inspiring. Let's see. I met with along with Councilmember Sayak. We met with a resident to discuss some DEI initiatives and possible activities. And yesterday, I was pleased to have lunch with our new supervisor, Josemidian, where we were able to discuss how the county can support the town in wildfire prevention, senior services, social services, and a variety of other opportunities. So it's great to know that our new supervisor is reaching out and wanting to get to know the council members and, forge a relationship with those Gatos in his expanding role. Thank you.
Lots of good work. Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. On February 15th, I met with Commissioner Kyle Park, my appointee on the Finance Commission. On February 17th, along with Town Manager Laurel Privetti, I met with Joanne Rogers, the founder of CASA, and several community members to discuss the recently approved cannabis study. On February 21st, I attended a Democracy Tent meeting as an observer regarding the potential for cannabis sales in Los Gatos. On February 22nd, as chair, I participated in the Council Policy Committee meeting. On February 23rd, I met with two members of the Los Gatos Community Alliance regarding the draft 2040 general plan, fiscal concerns, and the future vision for our town. On February 24th, I also attended the swearing-in ceremony for our new police chief, Jamie Fields. The huge turnout of support from our community and leaders in surrounding jurisdictions was testament to her selection. Most touching was watching her young daughter and husband pin her together. On February 28th, I attended the Democracy Tent meeting as an observer regarding senior services in our town. And later that evening, I attended the Senior Services Committee as a silent observer. And on the fun side, I also attended the ribbon cutting at the Tasting House. Thank you.
Lots of good work there also. Councilmember Sack.
Thank you. I attended many of the events that have already been mentioned, so I'll pass on a repeat of that, but just wanted to remind council members as well as any staff, the League of Cities Peninsula Division is hosting their first in-house event on March 16. It will be in Los Altos Community Center, and our guest speakers will be Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, Valley Water CEO Rick Callender, and moderated by Vice Mayor Jones of San Jose. And it's a great way to meet your colleagues in San Mateo and Santa Clara County. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sack. Let me start off. I saw somewhere in the news that Dick Sparer passed away this weekend. I'd like to recognize all of his contribution to keeping Los Gatos informed in his many years involved with the paper and so forth. So an important member of our community, or somebody who gave service to our community, has passed away, and wanted to recognize that. Second, my wife is born and bred in Kyiv and raised her daughter partially there. So also want to send my support and best wishes to the Ukrainians, both in Ukraine and abroad. Items that I've worked on between explicatives towards Putin were the BACMed board met on 2/16. I also judged the Lions Club speaker contest on 2/16, and on 2/16 I did a ribbon cutting for the 25th anniversary of Campo de Bacci. As mentioned, there was also a ribbon cutting on 2/24 that I did for the Tasting House, which is replacing where Chin Chin was, and before that Cafe Marcello. They have 150 different cheeses. I'm looking forward to trying them all, although my doctor did say I have high cholesterol, so maybe I will do it over time. On 2/18, the VTA board met in a study session talking about the future of light rail and what new technologies and how we might improve the system of light rail. 2/22, Cities Association had a closed session for potential litigation that I attended. On 2/23, the West Valley mayors and managers met. We had a presentation from the fire department about their evacuation tool. I'm forgetting the name of it. We've had a presentation of it here before. I also met on 2/24 with the principals of a company they're trying to start called Earth Foundries, whose company is developing a business around making forest brush clearing waste carbon negative through biochar or neutral through other methods. On 2/24, I attended the police chief's swearing in and was very pleased to see the size of the crowd. I think it was testament to how respected she is. As others mentioned, it was very, very touching ceremony. 2/28, the BACMed Bay Area Air Quality Management District Stationary Source Committee met, and we Had some updates on several rules that are being worked on and that are in progress, including climate pollutants and rule number 5, which petroleum refinery hydrogen plant, and proposed amendments to that, and regulation number 8, organic compounds. In addition, worked on rule number 2. And last night, also attended the senior committee. And with that, I'll go to manager matters.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Speaking of our senior committee, we do have a community survey that is out for seniors. These are people who are 55, 60 and over. If you received a yellow postcard, that means that you've been selected for the scientific survey. And we would highly recommend that you fill out that survey and help us make sure that we are delivering the type of high quality senior services that you would like to see here in Los Gatos. In addition, we are underway with our commission recruitment. Applications are due March 25th and interviews are scheduled for April 5th. More information is available at the clerk website. Thank you.
Thank you, manager. If I could go to town attorney for a closed session report, please.
Good evening. Sorry about that. Good evening. Prior to tonight's regular session, councilmen in closed session regarding real property negotiations. The property discussed was the New Moon Museum and the lease and terms and conditions of that lease. And the second item was the employee selection of the town attorney. No action was taken. It requires reporting under the Brown Act.
All right, thank you. Next up on our agenda is our consent calendar, which consists of item 1 through 9. Would any member of council wish to pull an item off of consent calendar? The point of consent calendar is approval of all these items with one motion. Seeing nobody wishing to pull an item, I will see if the public wishes to comment. Anybody from the public wishes to comment on any items on the consent calendar? I don't see any hands raised, so I'll close public comment for the consent calendar and come back to council for a motion. Go ahead, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I move to approve consent items 1 through 9.
Councilmember Badami.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. I will call the question. Councilmember Hudas.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Aye.
Councilmember Badami.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayak.
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes. So the consent calendar items 1 through 9 pass unanimously. And that brings us to verbal communication, which I always seem to forget, but won't do tonight. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to address us for 3 minutes on items that are not on our agenda anywhere. Would any members wish to speak to us about items that are not on our agenda? Let's start with Kylie Clark, please.
Good evening, Council. I hope that you've all been well. My name is Kylie Clark, and I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at West Valley Community Services, a nonprofit serving the residents of Los Gatos along with 4 other cities. I'm also a planning commissioner for the town, but I'm not here tonight in that capacity. I'm giving a brief public comment tonight to invite you all and all of the community to an exciting event that is taking place tomorrow evening. I believe that you're all already registered, which is incredibly exciting and greatly appreciated, but I want to give public comment about the event to invite everyone into this conversation. West Valley Community Services is holding an event titled Envisioning an Inclusive Los Gatos, Housing Element 101, tomorrow, Wednesday, March 2nd at 6 p.m. on Zoom. It will be a community dialogue about housing in Los Gatos and will feature a panel, including a Los Gatos housing element expert, a nonprofit representative, a housing developer, and 2 West Valley Community Service clients who will speak about their lived experience in affordable housing and homelessness. I strongly encourage everyone to attend, and I'm so excited to be hosting an event that is specific to my town. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at Kylie C, KYLIEC at wvcommunityservices.org. And to register, please visit tinyurl.com/Los Gatos housing. Thank you so much for all you do for our community.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Clark? Don't see any, so thank you, Ms. Clark, for all of your information. Next up, Cindy Walker.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Walker, and my husband and I have lived in the town of Los Gatos for close to 30 years. We adore this town. We have raised our family here and donated lots of time and creative energy to the Los Gatos schools and many events around town. Our daughter just graduated from Los Gatos High School, and I was one of the parents who dropped everything and helped plan and execute the senior prom, graduation, and even grad night with 6 weeks notice and very little budget. We did it. It was crazy fun. It was hard, but we did it for the kids. We did it for the town and our memories. We have owned a few homes in various locations around the town, including downtown, the beautiful mountains, the east side, the west side, and are familiar with various neighborhoods and traffic patterns in town. Boy, has this town grown. We recently purchased a home on the east side of town near Los Gatos Almaden Road, hence the reason for my speaking to the town council this evening. It has sadly come to our attention that the Los Gatos Almaden Road, once a sleepy road on a less traveled side of town, has become a crazy superhighway of sorts. All day, all night, motorcycles, cars, big load trucks barrel down this road at very high speeds, ignoring the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, bypassing pedestrians, cyclists, and locals enjoying their neighborhood. Unfortunately, this aerial road has limited speed signage, few crosswalks, only 3 traffic signals, and older bike lines. Police presence is limited. All of this has created a perfect storm for undue speeding. For the most part, this road is known for the way to go and get around town fast. It is so easy to get from Los Gatos Boulevard across town to Union, with stopping sometimes once, maybe twice at National or Taft. Los Gatos Almaden Road is also a commuter road for 3 schools, and throughout the day, kids, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, walkers, bikers, scooter kids, etc., transverse this roadside side by side, along with speeding, swerving, honking, and racing cars and trucks. It has become so unsafe for our residents, and at certain times of the day, downright dangerous for our kids. About 100 neighbors and I have worked together over the past few months discussing traffic calming measures we believe would make this road safer for everyone, and have sent a petition to the town engineer bringing light to these issues. We really think there needs to be better signage. We really think there needs to be some crosswalks. We really think maybe a traffic signal or 2 and better bike lanes, but really we leave it up to the town engineers to decide what's best.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Let me see if there's any questions for you. Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I have a quick question either for Ms. Walker or for staff. I believe you've spoken to the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission and maybe the council in the past. Is that true, Ms. Walker?
Just Complete Streets and Transportation, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then to staff, Director Morley. So am I wrong? Has anything come before? I thought there was some work or some attention that was going to be given to Los Gatos Almaden Road.
Yeah, we've done some improvements for bikes and peds in the recent past there. So we have a pedestrian crossing that we installed with flashing signals that has been a big success especially for children headed to Blossom Hill School. And then when we did paving on Blossom Hill Almaden Road, we were able to incorporate significant buffered bike lanes along that corridor, green bike lanes, to really enhance the safety for bicyclists and to slow traffic. So there have been items that we've been able to incorporate in the recent past on that corridor.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I've certainly used that left turn and that crosswalk over, I think it's closer toward Los Gatos Almaden than National, but so it sounds like some things are being addressed. And the other question I have is this a multi-jurisdictional road?
It is indeed. It's shared between the town and San Jose, and not always in very logical sections, but it is something that we work closely with San Jose for improvements along the entire stretch.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Walker. Looks like no more questions, so we'll put you back in the attendees. And next is Kevin Euclid.
Hi, Kevin Euclid from Loma Brewing Company. Today I received a citation for $500 for an event that was on Grays Lane that was not an event that we hosted. It says we were hosted for this event that was a Los Gatos high school baseball fundraiser with cornhole in the public side of Grays Lane. We have a serious issue with I hate to say it, it's the pun, of gray area on Grays Lane. Time and time again, people have called in to the county, have called into the town, have blamed us on days that we were off, that we're not even open. And quite honestly, my staff, myself, we need direction on Grays Lane. What is public? What's not? There's never been a legal agreement on where we go. It's been a lot of talk of the white picket fence, this area, that area. Adirondacks were put on, Adirondacks were taken off, never put back. Our staff has cleaned that road, has spent hours working on that, while we have been told many different things about Grays Lane. And the latest thing I've been told is that Grays Lane, as of May 1st, will be open again. I need to have understanding about Grays Lane going forward in order to run my business. We are applied for the parklet permit. We have done everything in our power. Now we're being told that it might be open. So therefore we have to change our parklet plan, because now there is no boulders there if cars are coming through, and now we got to pay more for our parklet if we need those barriers put into our parklet. So I'm just, I've wrapped my head around this in many different ways. I've tried every different angle on Grays Lane to try to make this town better. And quite honestly, right now, we are just super frustrated that we can't do anything out there without getting blamed. But musicians can set up shop on Grays Lane, play any music they want that actually people don't like, and they leave, and it hurts our business. But we deal with it. So I just need to have some understanding going forward. I know I'm probably not going to get the answers today, but in the future, if anybody wants to come and talk about it, please inform me on how Grays Lane is going to move in the future and how you really want us to take care of it.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there any questions from council members? Looks like no, but I think we'll be stewing on this in the background, so thank you for bringing it to our attention. Next, Joanne Rogers.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Rogers, co-founder of CASA, Community Against Substance Abuse, and founder of Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation. I was going to expound tonight on marijuana as a gateway drug and the harm it does to our kids, like 400 different toxins in pot that stays in the brain and the reproductive organs and the tissue, fatty tissues for weeks after using it. Think of this in terms of our kids. But instead, I read through the contract that our town attorney signed and 4 of the council members voted to fund for $50,000 with HDL, Cannabis Management Services Company. I believe we've opened a can of worms. Los Gatos will have no control on the outcome of allowing 3 marijuana dispensaries in our town, as has been proposed by DHL Scope of Services, unless there are 3 votes against it by the town council. There is no way this proposal for cannabis outreach and policy development contract is only going to cost Los Gatos taxpayers the initial $50,000 fee that we've just paid them. That's only the beginning. Let me tell you what I found out when I called one of the the HDL references. HDL has been sued by several cities, she said. I was told the rating process that HDL used in the city sent them different names, but they were all the same people. The summary of the scores were wrong. There was no oversight. They compiled all the surveys. They wrote the ordinance changes. They wrote the ballot measure. They decided the tax rate. They ran the public meetings and provided direction to town staff. Our contract says everything will be done virtually, even the meetings with town council members and all the public meetings, because travel expenses for in-person have not been included in the $50,000. The person I talked to, one of their references, said the cannabis business is a litigious business. 30 dispensaries had been closed down for various reasons. There is a lot of oversight needed by police and security, and HDL will do all of this. She said they paid HDL much more than $50,000. She said their key personnel, compliance director David McPherson, is a sales guy, period. Other personnel include 5 auditors, 5 compliance inspectors, and a few more. We have given this whole process over to the Cannabis Management Services Company, HDL. This is the fox guarding the hen house. And our town survey said 60+% of Los Gatos does not want this. Why would we go into this type of business? There are many other ways to raise money for our town. Don't spend another penny on this. It's wrong for our town. I have a letter from a Santa Clara Superior Court judge, and I'll mail that to all of you so you can read it.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Let me see if you have any questions from council members. Councilmember Hudis?
Thank you, Ms. Rogers, and thank you for your letters. I know you were trying to set up a meeting with me, and somehow I haven't been able to connect with you. I wonder if you might try again on that. But also, I wanted to ask you whether you're aware that when the town, if the town decides to have an ordinance or a ballot measure, I should say, that it is possible to ask the residents whether they want commercial operations as part of that ordinance. That isn't decided yet, but I just wondered if you were aware that it's possible to actually put that question on the ballot measure.
Well, it worries me that putting something like that on the ballot may be worded in a way that people don't understand it. And I think that the town council has to be the decision maker here. If it's the last straw to do it as a ballot measure, that would be for that. But I think that the town council members are the ones that have to be the ones that really make the decision as to whether they want our town to have the reputation of having marijuana dispensaries available here and selling storefront marijuana. We'll never get rid of the illegal sales of marijuana, and that's what this reference that the DHL company gave on the back of their contract. I just want to say my husband is sitting here with me and would love to be able to use 3 minutes also, if that's possible, Mayor.
Yes, that is. I see it's Travis Rogers.
Actually, that's my son. He's a Los Gatos High School graduate.
Okay.
He wants to say a few words.
You're on the same Zoom, so I can give him 3 minutes also, yes.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna do my husband first then, and then Travis, is that okay? Okay, go ahead. This is Joe talking.
Well, thank you. One thing I wanted to comment, as we've gotten a little involved in this and looked at everything that you as council members go through, my compliments and appreciation for the time and effort that you spend on this. It is impressive. And just have to look at some of the meetings and looking back at the meeting. The purpose of my question is really to get a better understanding on the status of the plans that have been submitted to the town of Los Gatos to permit the opening of cannabis operations in Los Gatos. It's my understanding from a meeting that Joanne and I had with Lauren Prevetta and Mary Badami, and based upon my reading of the minutes from prior to council meeting, that the town council must decide on how to proceed with having cannabis sales, growing and processing in Los Gatos. If that's approved by you, then you approve a tax rate on cannabis to be submitted to the voters by the town residents. Just what my objective is just to clarify it.
Okay, we'll ask staff after we finish with questions.
Okay, a little more to where I was going on this, since I still have a minute. I asked also what would be the location of cannabis sites, and they indicated that it had been not decided. However, I've got a letter from HDL companies dated January 24th, and it says they anticipated that the town may allow up to 3 cannabis retailers, and maybe you could just confirm that for us.
Okay, let me see if you have any questions. Any council members have any questions on this portion? I don't think so. So we'll continue taking.
I'm not quite.
Okay, go ahead.
I've got another request. I'm interested in seeing the financial statements that relate to the operation, and I know that the work is being done, and you've got some consultants. I think this is going to be very expensive, much more expensive to manage and operate than initial thoughts. And that is what we're hearing also from the reference that we had about it. So thank you. It's my end of my comments.
And thank you all for doing so much work for our town. I did want to say that too.
Okay, thank you. Let me have Travis. I don't know if he's different. He seems to be on a different Zoom, so we will put you back in attendees and have Travis's Zoom come forward.
All right, thanks for the opportunity. Obviously, we're a family of very passionate people around our town in Los Gatos, as is my sister, who lives just behind downtown Los Gatos as well. Born and raised in Los Gatos, obviously here to talk about the same subject. My mother, who was the founder of Community Against Substance Abuse, also the founder of New Millennium Foundation, chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in Los Gatos, Citizen of the Year in Los Gatos, and as you can tell by her passion, a true lover of the town and the family values that is really represented in Los Gatos, and it's been passed down from generation, because my sister and I feel the same way. You know, when I heard about the town considering allowing a dispensary, I was actually frankly surprised. You know, growing up in Los Gatos, hard to believe it would be something that you even would be considered. I'm also a business owner, so I understand the burden, the financial pressures, right? You guys have, and I was on the pension call earlier, by the way, so fully understand and respect that pressure as people are asking you to do things, and you know you need to fund them. And so there is pressure towards doing that type of thing. But you also have to ask yourself, is it worth the safety of our community? Is it worth having the feelings that your children can't walk down the street because there may be a driver high on weed driving by? Or would you feel as comfortable if you lived next door to the dispensary, keeping your front door unlocked as many of us do today? And so what I did is I actually went to a dispensary, drove down, and I actually sat outside a dispensary close by to my house, or as close as it was. And I just watched the people outside and, and the activities that were going on outside. And it's the hard part, I'm thinking to myself, how would I feel if this dispensary was near my house and near my family and near my children? And I think for you guys as a council, and again, I understand, as I said, the pressure of the financial pressure, right? This could relieve some pressure. You get a lot of tax dollars coming in from this, and you get the pressure from a lot of people with all the different things they want to do in the community. So I get that. But I think really in the end, and I've known many of the mayors, most of the mayors of Los Gatos in my lifetime. And I think your job as a council is really to protect the children of Los Gatos, protect me, to protect my children, to protect the families, and really more than anything, to protect the values that is what makes Los Gatos amazing today. If you read about what Los Gatos says, when you read about our history and the founders, they talk about it being a self-contained community. And I don't think we need the outside influence of this type of thing in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me check and see if there's any questions. Doesn't look like there are any. I think we gave them all to your mom, so thank you for speaking. Next, let's go with Celine Leroy.
Mayor, it looks like she has lowered her hand.
All right, then let's go to up. Now it's back up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is actually Luke Leroy, Celine's husband. So thank you everyone for hearing us tonight. I live on Los Gatos, I live on Suview Drive of Shannon Road, and this council a few years ago allowed us to gate that community actually. And the main reason was after a few reports that we did to the Los Gatos Police Department, because we used to have young people coming on the driveway here to smoke cannabis, enjoy the sunset, leave a bunch of trash behind. And actually I was threatened a couple of times, including a time when a Los Gatos High student, who obviously was driving high on weed, threatened me to pull a gun if I was not happy with the situation. And so altogether, after a few reports with the police department, we got that gated over here, which is very sad. But I wanted to emphasize that these kids who are smoking in the mountains of Los Gatos, they have to go home. So they turn their cars into what they call a hot box. So you have one 25-year-old kid who can drive, who can buy cannabis, but there is a bunch of kids with them in the car, and they all enjoy smoking because the smoke is in the car, filling the car, and they're all super high. And I've seen some pretty nasty situations with Los Gatos high school girls laying down on the road in front of the car, too high to contain herself. And I had to take them and say, hey, I know your parents, I'm just going to call them. And so that one of them is going to come and pick you up. So that's a situation that has been going on for about 10 years. I am worried that this will be greatly accentuated as we make cannabis more available. Also, there is a non-drug issue at Los Gatos High. You have some former Los Gatos High students that are selling cannabis to younger kids who should not have access to that. I am worried that the more accessible, the more local the cannabis will be, the more tempting it will be for kids to make a 10, 20, 30% profit by just crossing the road, buy some cannabis, go to 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, say, hey, you want some cannabis? I have some, it's pretty cheap. And the closer that cannabis source will be, the more tempting it will be for these kids to make a profit. That's what I'm worried about as well. So safety on the road, we have high kids driving, obviously, and too much cannabis too close to the high school. Thank you.
All right, thank you. See if there's any questions for you. I don't see any, so thank you for informing us. Next up, let's do Catherine Summers.
Good evening, Council. Hard to follow all of that up, but I will mention that there is a lot of passion there. And I'm here to actually tell everybody about the 2022 annual Chamber Luncheon, where we are going to celebrate the character of Los Gatos. And we've been taking nominations for the last month here, and I am proud to announce the winners tonight. All of them know that they have won. And I'll go through first of all, actually, I wanted to say, a couple of people have been confused about the word character. And I think it's such a great word for Los Gatos because it has a lot of definitions. We have a lot of characters in Los Gatos, and we all know some of them, and they make our town colorful and vibrant and everything else. Character also, you can talk about character attributes, integrity and honesty and just being a good person. And then, of course, so many people say that Los Gatos is a town that has a lot of character and charm, and everybody can interpret that how they wish to. But tonight I wanted to tell you about who our winners are. The first one is Donna Novi and her family and all that they have done. I mean, she is a character. Her family are all characters in the most loving, greatest way. And they have really helped us get through the COVID years and all that they've done to make their restaurant so available to all of us. Lisa Myers, who runs the Los Gatos Bird Watcher, who knew that we would all fall in love with the characters that are birds in our town. Ed Stahl, of course, he's been here for a long, long time and is a character and truly embodies the word character for how long he's been in business and how long he has persevered here. Susan Tuttle, who I think many of you know her, she has been picking up litter in our town for years and years, and we love seeing her every day. And really, her efforts on behalf of the whole town are admirable. And the last one is Rob Stump, who really is probably single-handedly going to save us all from that wildfire that might come into town. So we're so excited to honor them on March 25th at Loma Brewing. I do want to look at the Grays Lane situation as well, but that's for another day. I also wanted to say that we are going to honor, I'm not sure he'll be there. We wanted to really honor our attorney because we're really going to miss you. And you also are a character in many, many ways. And so we hope that you will be there to join us for that luncheon. Everybody buy tickets. They're online. You can buy them online at our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Don't see any questions. Next up, Stacy.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the marijuana issue. So my name is Stacy Hine. I've been a resident of Los Gatos for a long time. I grew up here, went to Dave's Avenue School as a kid, Fisher, Los Gatos High, returned here to open my own medical practice in Los Gatos with my husband. And now my kids have grown up here too, gone to Blossom Hill, Fisher, and now they're both at Los Gatos High. And the recent activity to move forward with having the marijuana stores in our town is very concerning to me. And I love just listening to the prior speaker talk about character of the town. And we love this town. I think we all have it in common. We live in a very unique place. There's very few places like Los Gatos. And I think it's really important that we all really try to keep it as unique and as wonderful as it is now. But I think a lot of this town is for the children, and we need to be able to look at our children in the eye and tell them that if these marijuana stores are in town, that, that it was in their best, we thought of their best interest. And if it were to be approved, can we really look at our children in the eye and say that this was approved in their best interest? I really cannot agree with that. Marijuana is known to be damaging to brain development. It has a highly addictive potential, and it's more addictive and damaging to teens before they have developed their brain than it is for adults. So it's very, very dangerous for our youth to be around the substance. It doesn't make sense to me to imagine a town where kids are walking by a store that contains addictive and dangerous drugs for them on the way to their family dinner out in Los Gatos, or going out in town with their friends, or imagine this, the Los Gatos holiday parade marching down North Santa Cruz Avenue, marching by a couple of cannabis stores. To me, that just doesn't make sense. It seems to me that the image of Los Gatos is wholesome and healthy and educated, and we want our children to grow up with those ideals. However, when you place a marijuana store in our town, it's really sending the opposite message to them. It is known that when youth use marijuana, an area in the brain called the prefrontal cortex prematurely thins out. And when this happens, the frontal cortex prematurely develops, and that can lead to long-lasting problems with behavior and memory, poor decision-making. And I sent you all an article about that around 5 o'clock today, so I hope you take a moment to read that. And it highlights yet another reason for us to do what we can to keep marijuana away from our youth. Up to 46% of teens and preteens are already known to have tried marijuana before the age of 15. Vaping exists in the bathrooms at Fisher, let alone Los Gatos High. And these are well-known problems. They're not new. When I was a student at Los Gatos High in the 80s, I remember all too well Brandon Silvera's car that was placed by his parents upside down on the front lawn of Los Gatos High School to show other students what happens when you drink and drive. Brandon was never the same, and you probably know he speaks about his experiences today.
Stacy, I'm going to have to cut you off there. You're well past your 3 minutes. So
Thank you.
Thank you for all the information. I don't see any hands from council, so thank you. I'm going to close verbal communications now and ask the town manager to just give us a very short synopsis of our process timeline for how this is the marijuana dispensary discussions moving forward.
Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge that our town attorney is here so he can fill in anything that I miss. A couple of council meetings ago, the council did direct the exploration of potential cannabis businesses in the town and did contract with HDL to do a community survey, evaluate different land use parameters, as well as potential ballot language regarding a tax. So that work is about to start. We've had a little bit of delay in terms of getting things moving, but we expect to do a kickoff meeting with the consultant shortly. And then that work will occur. It will probably take them a couple of months to complete the study. Once it's complete, that work will come back to the council at a public meeting for public discussion. We anticipate that there will be community outreach. Depending upon the state of the pandemic and the public health rules, we may be continuing to do business over Zoom. That's very possible, as we are doing a lot of our other community engagement over Zoom. But there will be multiple opportunities for the public to engage. And as we saw this evening, our public is not shy to let us know their thoughts now. And we are collecting all letters that are coming to us. So that way, when the matter does come back to council, all of your correspondence will be shared with the council. So we still have quite a bit of process. We are still in the exploration phase. No final decisions have been made yet. And let me just ask if Mr. Schultz would like to add anything more. Thank you.
Nothing further. I think you did a great job of recapping. And like you said, we're still in the exploratory phase. No decisions have been made one way or the other.
And actually, no information has come to council members about any of the exploration either, right? So Vice Mayor Risto, remembering this isn't an agenda item. Go ahead.
I guess I just had one question about the scope of this, and one of the members of the public brought up a comment about how expensive it would be to manage and operate. We are not talking about being involved at all as a town, correct?
No, we are
No.
asking for financials in terms of what might be the revenue from a potential cannabis tax. But the town would not be a business partner in any manner, just like we're not a business partner in any other private venture.
But part of that analysis will include the cost to the town to administer permits, compliance, enforcement. So that would also be part of, you've got revenues, but you certainly do have additional expenses, and they will be doing that as part of the financial analysis.
Okay, so thank you, everybody, for all the discussion on that. We will move now to our other business, item number 10, which is a report on our town sustainability efforts. I assume I'm turning it over to Mr. Morley or somebody in PPW. Marina.
Yes, Marina will be doing our report this evening. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to wait for Arn to start the presentation for me. Sorry, my camera's a little hot. Awesome. So thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. My name is Marina Chislett. I'm the Environmental Program Specialist with the town of Los Gatos. And tonight I'm just going to be highlighting our town sustainability efforts. Next slide. So I've gone ahead and I've categorized the top sustainability efforts by the following categories just to highlight and make it easier to review. So we have community sustainability, green streets, parks and trails, sustainable facilities, green ordinances, and growing greener together. But for the sake of time, I will not be able to dive into each topic, but after the presentation, I will provide a link for a complete list of town sustainability efforts. So to jump into community sustainability, we can't talk about community without mentioning, of course, the general plan. So the town is currently in the works of drafting the 24 general plan, which is a pivotal opportunity for residents to get involved and have input on shaping the future of Los Gatos. And one of the implementation items for this plan will be to update the town's sustainability plan, which has been guiding the town's sustainability efforts over the last decade. And we here at the town, we love celebrating sustainability. So we're extremely excited to announce that Spring It to Green, our annual sustainability event, will be coming back this year on Sunday, April 24th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Town Plaza Park. So we hope you all are able to come out, enjoy the live music, interactive environmental booths, family-friendly activities, a tree planting ceremony, and so much more. And lastly, we have Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Silicon Valley Clean Energy was formed by the town of Los Gatos and 11 other cities in Santa Clara County, forming a community-owned utility agency. They have been redefining the local electricity market, providing renewable and carbon-free electricity at competitive rates, as well as they have many energy savings rebates available to Los Gatos residents. Next slide. So moving on to green streets, parks, and trails. The town's continuing to expand available electric vehicle charging stations to provide a diversity of fuel options to help residents to greatly reduce CO2 emissions. And another great program is Connect Los Gatos, which includes bike and pedestrian products that promote connectivity and improve the multimodal network throughout the town. But nothing could ruin a nice bike ride like a littered trail. So the town of Los Gatos partnered with the West Valley Clean Water Authority and was awarded a grant to install 5 environmental waste stations throughout the Los Gatos Creek Trail. These environmental stations include a trash can, a recycling bin, a dog waste station, and environmental signage on pollution prevention. And lastly, of course, we have the West Valley Clean Water Authority. They serve as our stormwater pollution prevention authority for the town of Los Gatos and other surrounding West Valley cities. Next slide. Sustainable facilities. So since 2007, all of the town facilities have been certified as a green business by Santa Clara County. To be certified green, the town must be in compliance with the regulations that meet standards for conserving resources, preventing pollution, and minimizing waste. So just to spotlight our most sustainable town facility, the Los Gatos Library was constructed at the high LEED Gold standard. LEED is an internationally recognized green building certification system that measures features such as energy saving, water efficiency, CO2 emissions, indoor environmental quality, and stewardship of resources. And lastly, the town also has a fleet of both hybrid and electric vehicles to help reduce fuel consumption, resulting in fewer greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So moving on to green ordinances, with the help of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the town of Los Gatos in 2019 adopted an all-electric reach code for new construction, requiring electrification for all single-family and low-rise multifamily buildings. The most recent ordinance that was adopted is the Organics Waste Disposal Reduction Ordinance. This ordinance requires residences and businesses to divert organics from the landfill in a statewide effort to lower methane emissions effective January 1st, 2022. And lastly, the town enacted an urgency drought ordinance on August 3rd of 2021. The ordinance declares mandatory reductions and prohibitions of specific water use. The town has also reduced water usage in parks, fountains, medians, planter boxes, and continues to work closely with Valley Water as part of the Drought Response Task Force. Next slide. So lastly, we have Growing Greener Together. The Growing Greener campaign provides town employees and community members with seasonal newsletters highlighting conservation tips and pollution prevention tips for both home and in the office. The town is also a big advocate of proper disposal of both hazardous waste and medications through partnerships with Santa Clara County Household Hazardous Waste Program and the County of Santa Clara's Medication, Education, and Disposal Program, with their disposal bin located at the Police Operations Building at 5900 Los Gatos Boulevard. And Los Gatos Library also offers these wonderful home energy savings toolkits available to residents for checkout. These toolkits have energy measurement tools, and they provide many free conservation items to keep. And I wanted to wrap up my presentation with the mention, of course, of Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month coming up next month, as we hope to see you all at Spring and Green to helping us celebrate community sustainability. And in conclusion, that's my highlight of the sustainability efforts, but for a complete comprehensive list, feel free to visit our environmental initiatives page, which you could do so at the link below, or you could also just search environmental initiatives on the Los Gatos homepage.
Thank you. Let me start by opening public comment and see if anybody from our public wishes to comment on this item about sustainability. Do not see any hands being raised, so I'll close public comment. Come back to council. This was just a receiver report. So does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Gatos.
Thank you. In the report, I noticed that when we talk about sustainable facilities, we're talking about the town's facilities. Is there a similar certification for businesses, and can the town do more to promote, encourage, and assist businesses with this process?
So on our Growing Greener page, which is part of our Growing Greener campaign, we do have resource information for really promoting Los Gatos businesses to apply and go forward with the Santa Clara County Green Business Certification. We are all certified with all of our facilities, but we do have that resource information on our Growing Greener campaign for our businesses. And I could definitely connect with Monica and potentially have some more additional resources to give out to new businesses as well.
Okay, I had a second question, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I mean, the report is impressive, and I want to kind of put this all under the umbrella of where do we go from here? Are there significant items that we considered but haven't implemented? Are there concerns, financial or community acceptance concerns? And how do we achieve ongoing continuous improvement in sustainability?
If I may, I'll jump in and see if I can start an answer here. Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. So I think the point of this report is to show, with the highlights that Ms. Chislett provided for us, and significantly more items that are listed on our webpage, that the town has and continues to make efforts towards environmental sustainability. And it's not something that we look at as a one and done type of a situation. There are continual efforts. We're always looking for opportunities to increase our efforts and to do more, and to balance that with things like mandates that are coming to us from the state, and our capacity to implement. So I don't know that it's something that we report on and are done with. It's something that continues, and not just from Parks and Public Works. It's from every department. It's really a team effort, and contributions are made across the board in our environmental programs.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Saya.
Thank you, Ms. Chislett, for your presentation. It's very comprehensive, and I'm super excited Spring into Green is coming back. A couple of thoughts, no questions, but as Councilmember Hughes says, where do we go from here? And so it's probably already going to happen, but just for my own sake of mind, just putting it out there. I know when we talk about our general plan 2040, we talk about accountability, and there have been significant conversations about whether we create a commission and the reasons why not. I like the idea of having a website. I like the idea of listing it on a presentation, and look to really you and the department to try and capture all the work that we're doing town-wide, and perhaps maybe reporting on it on an annual basis, so that we don't feel like this is just a one and done, and that there's always opportunities for us to weigh in and remind the public all the work that the town staff is doing on our behalf. So that's one. And then the second, you mentioned the library, and you could answer this, or we could wait till we talk about capital improvement. Once you're certified LEED, is there any maintenance that is necessary to keep that up? Because we're so proud of our library, and it just occurred to me, it was LEED Gold at that time, and I'm just curious if that's something that requires maintenance. So
there is. So two answers for you. One, the original construction certification is a one-time thing. So you certify, and that designates the building based on how it was constructed. So all about the new construction side of things. There is an operations and maintenance portion of LEED that we don't participate in officially. We do try and perform our building maintenance in as green a way as possible, and we continue to look for opportunities. For instance, not too long ago, we did LED light replacements in our buildings and in our streets. So there's constantly improvements that we're doing to maintain our buildings in a ever more environmentally friendly way, including our LEED buildings, which, you know, as they age, the technology changes, and there are increased opportunities there, as shown with our library as we're moving forward with battery storage for that particular facility. So a continued ongoing effort for us on the maintenance side.
thank you. And then my final comment, Mayor, we've talked about it at length, stormwater. That is a huge area that we need to look at to maintain environmental sustainability. It's an unfunded mandate. It's on our growing list of infrastructure needs. And again, I'm going to call this out. I know we're going to talk about it further, but that's another area that can make a large dent in our own efforts as we look at what we can do holistically. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just follow up on one of the questions. So we got LEED Gold when the library was built, and then at this point we're looking for backup power because of problems these days, and we could have chosen to go with a diesel backup. Would we have then lost our, you know, effectively, if we built it in the first time and we used a diesel backup, would that have not allowed us to get gold? And now, I mean, the point that we're going with a battery backup instead of typical diesel backup, I'm curious about, do we really get, or does that make us beyond LEED Gold, or is that just keep us out of falling out of LEED Gold because we aren't using the hard for me to explain what I'm trying to get at. I know we got our certification, but if we were to go do it today, would we get a certification by choosing a diesel generator?
Well, so first of all, the bar is always being raised. So the standards when we certified the library may not be the standards today, but irrespective of that, the building was built to the highest standards, and a goal achievement is not an easy thing to do. Certainly something to be bragging about even today, 10 years later. LEED works by additive points, so you have an opportunity to get points for certain aspects of the construction that you're able to complete and implement. But because you don't achieve something doesn't mean that you lose points. So if you choose to go a different direction, for example, recycled water inside of a facility would get you LEED points, but we don't have access to recycled water. We just don't get those points. So we have to get our points to the gold level through different methods. And so that points to why it's so difficult, because you don't have access to everything that you could get points for. And so it becomes a big effort to get to that high gold level.
Okay, let me go to Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I like the idea that Councilmember Sack brought up with, kind of an annual update, because I realize it's a constant improvement project. There's always new things being added. And certainly having worked on the General Plan Advisory Committee, there is a lot of potentially new things or strengthened efforts that, will come forward in the General Plan 2040. And so I think to the extent that there's a website and a newsletter that residents and businesses can access and see what new efforts are going forward, what are some resources. I know that sitting on the water district, as we're looking at the drought, we want to encourage people not only to conserve water, but, if we had links for how to switch to gray water, do an in-home gray water, or encouraging people to plant drought-resistant plants, not put in plastic grass, and all the reasons why you don't get a rebate for plastic grass. Just those things, having those resources, and then, all the education we've done with plant-based food options and, the encouragement we've got there. So I think we've got, pulling this all together, we have an extraordinary effort. And, I commend staff not only for the ongoing work, but pulling this together so we can all see it at once, and, people have an idea of where to go. And then, what my hope would be is that the business community at some point would be able to get on board, led by the Youth Commission with their Last Straw initiative. The dream would be ultimately that all takeout is done in reusable containers. And, maybe in a small town, there'd be one kind of container that you put a deposit on and it's reused by all the businesses. There are models in other cities. I don't think our town staff needs to forward that, but I'm hoping that those ideas kind of come together and people can see how they can all work together to improve our sustainability. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for all the good work that we're doing and for the good report. This is just a receiver report, so I don't need a motion or anything. If there's no further comments, I will close this item. Looks like no further comments, so we'll go ahead and close item number 10 and move on to item number 11, which is an update on our Shannon Road pedestrian and bike improvements.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. Woo-Jae Kim, Town Engineer, here to provide an update on the Shannon Road pedestrian and bikeway improvements project. We have a presentation. There we go. So we'll jump into the next slide. There are several action items for this agenda item for your consideration tonight, but for this presentation, I'll be focusing on the project update to the Town Council. I'll do my best to go through the slides quickly. Let's see here. Quickly on the background of the project. The scope of the project is to install sidewalks and bikeways on Shannon Road between Los Gatos Boulevard and Cherry Blossom Lane. Shannon Road here is a neighborhood collector and a popular route for students to bike and walk to schools. Also, over 5,500 vehicles travel on Shannon Road each day. The segment is identified in the town's 2017 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan and also in its 2020 update. In 2018, the town received almost $1 million in federal grant for the project. The project team engaged the Shannon Road community extensively through the design process, including several community meetings and individual meetings with the residents out there. On October 19, 2021, the town council approved the design for a buffer class 2 bike lane with sidewalks on both sides on Shannon Road after considering different options. Next slide, please. After the council approval, an online survey was conducted by staff to better understand the priorities of the Shannon Road residents on the various design elements as shown here. Next slide, please. The survey results reflected that the planter space or green space between the property line and the new sidewalk was the highest priority for the residents, and the on-street parking was the second highest. Next slide. A few of the other comments received through the survey include maintaining the neighborhood feel of Shannon Road, keeping the bike and pedestrian improvements as narrow as possible, having planter strips next to property lines, and making sure the on-street parking is a high priority, and a few other comments. At the third community meeting held in November last year, the survey results were shared with the public. And from the priority findings through the online survey, the project team worked on incorporating 2 feet planter spaces, about 2 feet wide planter spaces between the property line and the new sidewalks where possible. Also, the designer was able to add more on-street parking by reducing widths of certain design elements. The project team prepared a draft of the 65% plans, which was presented at the 4th community meeting on January 15th, hosted on site. However, the residents still wanted more green space and narrower widths for design elements. And after the 4th community meeting, the 65% plans were further updated, as shown now here, to include more green space. So the layout plan that's shown here is one of the layout sheets for the updated 65% design. The area shown here, it might be hard to see, is west of Magnuson Loop. The red clouded area, kind of small, sorry about that, shown here is where the planter strip between the roadway and sidewalk was extended for more green space. We'll actually jump to the next slide. The cross sections are shown here. The first cross section is near Los Gatos Boulevard, where there is existing sidewalk. The bike lanes are 5 feet wide. Buffer spaces to the roadway are 3 feet wide. The second cross section is just east of Roby Lane, where the public right-of-way reduces to 55 feet. Bike lane and buffer widths are consistent through here, and new sidewalks are 6 feet wide. And the approximately 2 feet wide planter spaces between the property line and sidewalk are added where possible. There are areas where the planter spaces are needed between the roadway and the sidewalk, as shown at the in the second cross section here, to save existing trees or due to a utility pole at the location. The town standard for a planter strip between the roadway and sidewalk is actually 4 feet. So on Shannon, the planter strip is less than 3 feet, which is a deviation from the town standard, and it's not the ideal width for planting new trees. Next slide, please. This updated 65% layout shows the location generally east of Magnuson Loop, where on-street parking would be provided on the south side of Shannon. With the updates to increase the planter space, as shown in red clouds here, there still can be about 12 on-street parking created on the south side of Shannon Road. So again, the red cloud, I think two locations shown here is where we were able to extend or make the planter strips wider to accommodate more green space. Next slide, please. And these are the cross sections related to that layout plan. So again, the cross sections show on-street parking on the south side. Typically, the on-street parking width is about 8 feet wide, but the designer made it 7 feet here, but added 2 feet buffer space to bike lanes to accommodate the reduction of that parking space width. Next slide, please. The 65% cost estimate went up by approximately $200,000 from the estimate reported at the concept design, and that's due to the additional storm drainage system improvements and pavement rehabilitations needed, and increase to design and project delivery costs, which is shown on this table here. We'll go to the next slide. The initial project funding strategy was presented to council in October last year. The strategy is still the same, but there are some increases to potential additional funding needed from the annual storm drain project and the annual street resurfacing project because of the cost increase. Staff will return to council with the final estimate and the actual funding allocations needed. Next slide, please. For next steps, it is vital that the project team move forward with the final design without having to make further changes to the core design of the project. Or there are opportunities for improvements, staff will work with the designer before moving forward beyond the 65% design plans. Further changes would increase design costs, it would impact the cost estimates, and would likely delay the project. The final design is anticipated to be completed by spring this year with the necessary approvals from Caltrans for this federal aid project. With bidding and contract award in the summer, the earliest that we could start on the construction of the project is fall of this year. However, the construction schedule could be further delayed pending the utility relocations to be completed by various utility companies. Next slide, please. The project team will continue to work with the Shannon community through the final design, and staff will continue to engage and meet with the individual property owners to coordinate the project, and project updates will be posted on the project website as shown here. Next slide, please. This slide shows all the staff recommendations for this agenda item for council's reference. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Let's start off by going to the public. I see questions from or comments from Sherry Binkley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you so much for taking my comment. I would like to reiterate the fact that I think the buffer to the bike lanes in this instance is excessive and not allowing us to have the added tree and canopy size that we would like for the Los Gatos Road. If we eliminated the buffer space that's between parked cars and the bike lane, it would give us a couple of extra feet to have green space or planting strips that would be uniform and in line with the town of Los Gatos guidelines, which currently are not being met, the standard here, because those planting strips are 2 feet, not 4 feet, and in some places completely non-existent. I would like to see that we have planter strips that are in line with the town council or the town of Los Gatos guidelines, so that we can have a canopy size in Los Gatos that adds to one of our goals, which is to have to not decrease the canopy size in Los Gatos and allow us to add trees that are, many of which are not necessarily being counted because of low diameter size and other things. When we go in and add this large amount of pavement and asphalt, some of the area that was added as planting area came with the addition of increased buffer space as opposed to decrease. So now we're seeing buffer spaces that are in excess of these 2 to 3 feet because they removed the planter, or they removed the parking, which was 7 to 8 feet, gave us 2 feet of the planter space. And the extra, I think 5 feet or so would go towards an excess in buffer. So it's going to look like a really wide road with no shade for walkers and bikers. It's going to become a place that's really unpleasant to walk and bike. I think people are going to avoid walking and biking on a street that doesn't have trees and shade and greenery. And this is just starting to look so industrial that I would really like us to focus on trees and green space and planting strips. Thank you so much for hearing me. I really do love this project. I really want to see the bike lanes there. I want to see the sidewalks. I want to see all this happen. I just think that the buffers are really causing a problem because we just don't have the width to have the green space that this road deserves. I mean, we're part of Los Gatos. This should be it's a community road. Kids walk on it. They need shade. We need greenery. Please look at this from an aspect other than like how much are we able to develop and add an asphalt and add cement to it, but how much can we save as far as greenery or add to it and make it better and add canopy size. Thank you so much for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Sherry, we do have a question for you from Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood at least part of your request, and that was, is it correct that you want to eliminate buffer space between the bike and parking?
Correct.
To allow a uniform 4-foot planter strip?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so thank you, Ms. Binkley. Next up, let's go to Jeff Thompson.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am serving on the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission, but I'm actually speaking as a resident tonight. I just wanted to say and give thanks to town staff, who I think has done a great job in trying to find middle ground between all the different design constraints and lots of feedback coming in from lots of different sources. Tonight, I'd like to speak in favor of keeping the 3-foot buffer between the bike lane and the car traffic in both directions. I think that's the most important buffer space. The previous speaker mentioned the buffer space in between parked cars and the bike lane, which is maybe not as critical as the buffer between moving cars and the bike lanes. So I think we really need to keep the buffer in place for the bike lane, in between the bike lane and the car traffic. There's lots of kids riding their bikes up and down Shannon Road at school time. And not only are there lots of bikes, but I've seen them engage in some unsafe behavior, such as riding side by side and riding on the wrong side of the road. I've observed that many times. And in my opinion, we've not really seen a serious accident, mainly due to the careful driving of cars. I really think the buffer lane increases the safety of the kids on bikes, which I think is really the main concern and the main reason why we're doing the project is for safety. So having the 3-foot buffer between car traffic and the bike lane reduces the chance of collision between a car and a bike. And I think it should be actually prioritized above the planting areas and parking. Lastly, it's a state law that cars must pass bikes with a 3-foot margin, and the buffer makes it much easier to comply with this law. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
you, Mr. Thompson. I'm not seeing any questions for you. Thank you for speaking. Next, let's do Kylie Clark.
Hello again, I'm back. As I said earlier tonight, my name is Kylie Clark. I'm a proud resident of Los Gatos. Again, I'm also a planning commissioner, but I'm not speaking in that capacity tonight. I'm here tonight to voice strong support of the Shannon Road pedestrian and bikeway improvements. As a town resident who is pretty new to the bicycle scene, I can tell you that it's scary to start bicycling in Los Gatos. The environment is really important to me, so I'm trying to use my bicycle more when going around town, but this has a really high barrier to entry. I'm sure that I'm not alone in this, as so many community members care about the environment, their health, and the many other benefits that come with bicycling and walking. However, if it's too dangerous and frightening to pick up this activity, people aren't going to. These improvements will not only help those beginning to bicycle, but they'll of course also protect all bicyclists and our wonderful pedestrians. I too wish that there could be more greenery, but the fiscal price that this would add to the project is massive. And I think that we should first focus on the safety of our residents. And I hope that we can look to this in the future, but that we should not focus on that now. These roads were built for cars, and that's not the direction that the town and our world are moving in. We need to make changes to our infrastructure to accommodate these changes in transportation methods. Obviously, not everybody will support this project, especially those who live alongside these improvements. However, I really want to emphasize that while this project could have a slightly adverse effect on 10 or so people, it will have a positive effect for thousands of community members for years to come. We must keep the greater good in mind and not succumb to the pressure of a few who don't stand in favor of this project. Everyone working on these improvements has also gone above and beyond to make this project as accommodating as possible and are really making a good faith effort to meet the needs and wants of everyone. However, no project will be perfect, and that's no reason to keep from moving forward. I also want to add that I support this project as is. As the staff report states, any changes will have significant design and timing cost implications and would also put grant funding at risk. Thank you for your time and for consideration of this project. I'm very excited about this project, and I appreciate all of the hard work that you, our town council, and the rest of you, all of the staff do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I don't see any hand raised, so again, thank you for your comments. Next, let's go to Andy Horwitz.
Hello. Thank you for your time this evening. And I want to say I do really appreciate the amount of engagement that we've seen from the 10 engineers and the council during the last few months, where residents of Shannon Road were not really involved early on. There's been a significant change, and we appreciate that as a community. As what you've hopefully seen by our notes and our comments, the residents of Shannon Road, which I am one of, are very united in the belief of the project. For people who live there every day, I respectfully disagree very strongly with the last two people presenting. The streets and safety are a very big issue, but today there's not an evidence of any safety issue, number one. Two, adding the speed bumps alone will have a major impact in changing the street and the safety, as we've seen on the other part of Shannon Road. Third, what we've not seen, although we've asked for, is evidence from the other areas of town where we've seen changes to the road with buffer lanes. Has bike ridership actually increased? At Fisher, does not appear to have been any increase in bike ridership of Fisher students. Additionally, when we look at the changes to roads, both Los Gatos Boulevard and Winchester, not only are they more industrial, less inviting, there are also actually other safety risks that I feel are not being addressed, in particular to passengers of the cars. As the cars doors open, more to traffic, the floating parking actually are creating other risks, as evidenced in the most recent drawing in terms of a smaller buffer. So I think very strongly the best path is actually to eliminate the buffers, to actually enable the street to be as wide as possible, and minimize the actual impact both into property and enable to have this both a bike lane and a sidewalk, but keep it simple. That's a simple thing. We're over engineering with the buffers, and they're actually impacting the beautification, the value of our street and our community, and actually not providing any additional safety. So as you move forward and think about the investments and the incremental costs that we are incurring as the project continues to increase, the cost now we're looking at about 1.5 million of the town. As we heard earlier tonight, there's a lot of other issues facing this town, and that $1.5 million could likely be put to much better use. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. I don't see any questions for you. So again, thank you for your comments. Let's go to Rob Moore next.
Progress. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak briefly as a resident and community member of Los Gatos. I'm really excited about this project and thankful for this update and conversation. Los Gatos needs better bike and ped infrastructure all over town, and I think this is an excellent site for improvement. I want to voice my support for the 3-foot buffer, which is really important for the safety of cyclists, especially young and novice cyclists who are in need of as much buffer room as possible to ride safely. I'm looking forward to seeing our students utilize these sidewalks and bike lanes on their way to school. Thank you all for doing the hard work of creating more complete streets in Los Gatos. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. I don't see any questions for you. Let me go to Bill Ellers next.
It appears that he has lowered his hand.
It was up the whole time until I called on him. So I don't see any other hands raised for this item. Oh, now his hand went back up.
Hello there. My name is Bill Ellers. I'm the Vice Chair of the Complete Streets Transportation Commission, speaking as a cyclist and not a commission member right now. I cycle, and so do hundreds of people on Shannon Road. It's a normal way out of town into the mountains, our lovely mountains. And having a buffered path between parked cars, driving cars is invaluable to our safety. And you know, the street is a complete street. It has to be meant for all citizens, people in wheelchairs, people, cars, people on bicycles, and pedestrians. Making it a car-centric path is not the way forward for Los Gatos or the world. And as Jeff Thompson mentioned, there is a 3-foot passing rule, state law, that nobody actually understands. So the 3-foot buffer is what enforces that rule and the safety of all cyclists. And I'd like to highly recommend that we keep the plan as is and even add a physical barrier in that buffer to prevent delivery trucks from parking on it, provide extra safety for people and comfort for cyclists. And that's all I have. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellers. I don't see any questions for you. So again, thank you for speaking. Next up, let's go with Mark Weiss.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time and effort with this matter. I'll just agree with my fellow neighbors that have already commented in detail about kind of the process that we've been through with this. We've been very engaged recently. When staff talks about ongoing engagement, I would say that that's not been the case throughout this project, but we have been fully engaged as of probably late last year, definitely in December and January. The report, the 65% report that was published earlier this week, just a few days ago, by the way, was actually lacking a lot of detail. I engaged with staff to try and present to you the area where the parking was. It's now highlighted in the drawing that you see. That is at our request. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even seen that. There are 12 parking spaces that have been allocated according to the 65% plan. A quarter of those are actually in front of my home and my 2 neighbors' home. I'm not sure. I think staff told me that when my when I popped up, there would be a picture of like a tree lined parking area, that trees or green space could actually be implemented in between these parking spaces to actually, accommodate both situations, parking and adding green space. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. Is that up?
No, there's nothing up right now.
Okay.
Can you bring that up, please?
Essentially what it is, we have it in downtown areas. So this isn't our downtown, but this is just something off the internet. But you can see how easily green space could be added in between parking spaces. This was brought up at our January meeting with staff. The spaces that were added in by staff that are the red clouded areas on the drawing, we don't know what that entails. No one says that that's going to be trees. Is that going to be just ivy? We don't know what that entails. But this is a simple solution of probably, I'm not measuring it, but maybe it's a 6 foot by 6 foot space that could actually generate and create a tree lined street for us. So I'd like to really ask you to take this type of thought process into your decision making moving forward. So when staff says that there isn't any more space for green space, there is. I am in support with many of the fellow neighbors here that the 3 foot buffer is just absolutely not necessary. We're all in support of the sidewalk. We're in support of the bike lanes, but we want to save our neighborhood and continue and work with you with this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. You have a question from Councilmember Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. And I don't know if the drawings are specific enough at this point, but are you able to tell from the drawings how many of the 12 parking spaces you would ask to eliminate, and how many trees would you ask to be placed of the sort that you showed in the illustration? Are you able to do that from the drawings that you have available?
Well, first off, we just got the drawing yesterday from Wu Jan at 5 p.m. So there hasn't been a lot of time for us to actually look at this. But if you look at any parking space that involves 2 parking places, if we could add a tree in between those 2 parking places, I feel like that would be a good space for them. So to answer your question, no, I haven't been able to. And even if I were able to, I would only be able to verbally tell you where those are. But I think more staff engagement on this actual topic could actually generate and maybe provide some elevation drawings that would actually, illustrate it a little bit better than, this kind of, architectural diagram that we're working from.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for drawings, and I attended the January meeting. This was discussed in January, and I'm just wondering if the neighbors have seen anything that I haven't seen that's a result of that meeting, identifying places where trees would go or spaces would be eliminated. Was there any correspondence or any documents that came out from the town?
Just the drawing that you're seeing right there that has the red clouded areas in, which I had to ask what those were because there were no notes to it. We could just see that there were red clouds. So that was just going to be presented onto you without any clarification. And I engaged with staff to kind of further explain what that was. And really all I got was the red clouded space are going to be green space, but that's it. And then I engaged with staff further to help identify the actual parking places and how many they were. So then we got later yesterday, literally at I think 5 p.m. right at the close of business, we received the drawings with the yellow indications of parking spaces. And so since 5 p.m. yesterday, we haven't been able to, look at it more in depth to, help identify that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. I don't see any other questions. So thank you again, and we'll go to Maria Gerst.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I just thank you for all the work Mr. Wujan has done and the council has done in order to help the residents feel that they have been heard on this issue. I wanted to jump in and just say that we are on board with and support this project. We would just like, of course, for it to minimize the impact that it makes on our lives or on our place of residence. That's all. But we are in full support of this project. And we would just like to have a little more consideration for the green space, because that's what we feel lacks on this street once the street has been converted into a sidewalk and bike lane. And that's all really I have to say. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Gerst, and thank you for keeping it brief and reminding us of what others have said. No questions for you, so I will go to Ned Finkel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
So I guess I would supporting Mark's statements and we're positive on improvements to the community. So we're coming in as a unified neighborhood, but there's probably 31 houses affected, quite a few, and from a real estate impact and the aesthetics and things like that. The main thing we're looking at is speed humps to slow things down, and then we're not against bike lanes. We're just asking for the padding to be minimized. And I see in sections, there's padding on both sides of the bike lane, and we're looking for green space added. So the trees in between, we want the street to look like a neighborhood street, not a busy boulevard. And when you put the humps in, you can see on East Shannon, the behavior is completely different. I participated in that. That changed the dynamic of the street. It's the same activity that was going on down there. That street is a 15 to 20 mile an hour street. You can walk across it in sections away from the crosswalks, things like that. Bicyclists can come in and out of the street as they decide. And I would point out a lot of our bicyclists are becoming e-bikers and they're going faster. So I want to make an observation that e-bikers and some of those guys are going as fast as cars. They may need to be out in the actual regular car lane. You don't want to trap them in the bike lane. So the residents just want to maintain a neighborhood feel. They would like greenery, and we would like to punch out with trees and things like that as many places as we can, because we know that reduces the speed on streets. It's proven that streets with the more foliage and things like that tend to be slower. Put the humps in. Can we just minimize the space, the padding spaces? Supporting Mark's statements and some of the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finkel. I don't see any questions for you, so thank you again. Next is Peter Binkley.
Yes, hello. Thank you for hearing my comments. My name is Peter Binkley. I'm a resident on Shannon Road. Also, I'm a bike commuter. I commute to both El Camino Los Gatos and Good Samaritan Hospital, where I work as an emergency physician. And in my line of work, of course, I know that nothing's more important than safety, especially when children are involved. And Shannon Road, as you all probably know, is a very busy throughway for children going to and from various schools in the area. So I want to thank everybody for prioritizing this project and working hard on getting it right and prioritizing safety. Now, that being said, I don't feel that there needs to be any sort of sacrifice in terms of beauty or aesthetics just for safety. I feel that the two are really not mutually exclusive. And so my point would be, when I look at this thing with a fine-tooth comb, what can we take away in order to add more green space? And the obvious answer to me is the buffer between the bike lane and the parked cars. Parked cars are stationary objects. I understand as a bicyclist and bike commuter that you can get doored. Someone opens their door on a parked car, that can be very dangerous for a bicyclist. And I biked in New York City where that really happens quite a bit. But here on Shannon Road, I can tell you, the cars parked on the side of the road are not opening their doors frequently. These are not people running in and out of businesses. These are people that are parked at their homes. They're only going to be getting in and out of their cars, once or twice a day, if that. So painting, a 2-foot buffer that is a lot of pavement, the whole distance of the street, 2 feet wide between the bike lane and the cars, or I don't even know, might even be wider. It's hard to see based on the plans. But to me, that space is unnecessary. And I did a lot of research looking at national highway traffic safety data, which really strongly confirms my suspicion that most traffic fatalities and severe injuries are between bicycles and moving vehicles, not with parked cars. So though dooring does occur, it's very rare to occur, especially in a street like this. And so I would really say it's quite an easy way to get some green space is by eliminating that buffer and possibly seeing where we can shrink it in other places in order to make more space for trees or other green space. Thank you very much for hearing my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Binkley. I do not see any questions for you. So thank you again. I do not have any more hands from the public, so I will close public comment on this item and come back to council for questions and eventually motions. And looks like Mr. Councilmember Hudis was the quickest on the draw.
This is a quick one. I wanted to understand the funding opportunity. Is it true that if we make any changes to the plans that are presented tonight, that we will not be able to get the grant funding? I had heard in a public meeting, I think at the CSTC, that the limitation was that we had to start construction by early next year. Is that correct, or are we locked in tonight?
Yes, thank you for that question. Currently, actually, we are supposed to be obligating the grant funds for construction this year, but we're working with our grantor to get that extended to next year, early next year. So we do have to get everything ready to start construction and obligate the funds early part of, by no later than early part of next year. So that's what we need to meet.
So could minor design changes like what we've been talking about be made and still get the grants?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we're still looking for opportunities, and the comments that we got from the residents, we're investigating that to see how we could improve the current design. But any significant changes would definitely would put some delays and would likely again require more design fees. Our designer was instructed to be on hold because of their accumulating fees and costs, and that's one of the items that we're asking for to increase their contract. But some of the issues, questions, or comments that we're hearing about the bulb outs for trees. Currently, there's no plans for planting any trees at this moment because that means we would have to likely put an irrigation system. There may be opportunities to work with the residents to put some kind of an agreement that they maintain the trees. But even to add bulb outs, there are other engineering considerations, such as making sure there's no utilities and conflict in that location. There are gas lines and storm drain lines that go under in the area in question here. So there are quite a bit of things that we got to look at, and also doing bulb out, as Mr. Weiss showed a picture, that would also be a challenge to the maintenance and the operations of the roadway. So quite a lot to consider. And so we have been looking at those issues, and it might be difficult for public members to kind of see all the background work that's happening, but any changes would require a lot more design and engineering.
Okay, well, I think we're probably going to need to get very specific at some point in tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, we talk about this year, next year, we're talking about the fiscal year. which ends in June, correct?
So for the grand tour, the deadline that I'm hearing is the March or April of next year. So I guess that will be the upcoming fiscal year.
And it could take that long to make changes?
There are still other things that we got to do. We're at 65% design stage, and this would be not normally the time we would be making these kind of changes. We would normally do that at the concept stage, which was approved by council, and that's why we're moving forward. If we have to reconsider and go back to the concept, we might have to re-engage the 65% design scope. So there's quite a bit of process involved. But if anybody's an engineer would know, like kind of stepping back and making changes is not an easy thing. But again, if there are opportunities that we could improve on and working with the designer, we are still looking at those items.
Okay, Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. A couple questions. It seems to me that if you reduced the buffer space, that it would reduce the overall costs. So I'm not sure if you consider that a minor design change. Would that impact the project considerably with the design?
I think there may be, thank you for that question, council member. There are two buffer spaces in question here. There's the buffer, that's a 3-foot wide buffer between the roadway and the bicycle lanes. And I think everybody understands the importance of that buffer and the fact that there's a state law that says the cars need to be 3 feet away from moving bikes. So there may not be a whole lot of opportunity to reduce that, mainly for safety reasons. There's some discussions about the buffer width between a parked car and a bike lane, and that's only currently 2 feet only. And as I mentioned, thank you for putting up the slide. So our normal standard width for a parked car would be, or parking space would be 8 feet, but we made it narrower here in this case to keep it at 7 feet so that cars are as close to the curb as possible. And then we're adding 2 feet of buffer space between the cars and the parked cars and the bike lane. And if we were to kind of I don't think we'll minimize that. If anything, it might be an option to get rid of. Then we might have to go back to a wider parking width, which wouldn't really gain a lot of width there. And for the safety of the bicyclists and the kids, that's currently the proposal here, to have a buffer space between parked cars and bike lanes. So.
Okay, your comments led to my second question, and that is for staff. Do we have any documented safety issues of autos and/or bike incidents on Shannon Road?
I did try to look for that information and talk to our traffic engineers to research that. And I'm still waiting for that information, so we could probably come back and report on that. So that may need to come back to council at a later time, but just because we haven't encountered a major significant an incident there does not make this not a safety concern. So we're being retroactive and proactive in making the safety improvements. And again, this has been prioritized in other master plans for bike and pedestrian master plans and so forth. And but we could come back with any accident or safety data, bring that forth to council at the next time.
Now, that may be important in our considerations this evening, but we don't have it for this evening. So thank you for your comments, and that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council members, thoughts, motion? Councilmember Hudis.
I had a question about the costs. It looks like the cost is now 2.5 million. Does that include bringing the sidewalks to a logical endpoint that was in the staff report, does that add on to the 2.5 million?
We do have some contingency built in to that estimate. So we're looking to, we're hoping the contingency would take care of that additional 60, 70 feet of sidewalk that we may need to build. But we could also control the cost by making sure that's like an additive alternate when we go out for a construction project, so that if it's beyond our budget, we could maybe look at that at a next project. But we're hoping that we could include that as part of the current estimate.
Okay, so nothing additional for that at this time. It looks like the concept 3 now at 2.5 is very close to the concept 2 at 2.9. Has the 2.9 for concept 2 also increased at this point because of the changes that have been made, and that's no longer 2.9, it's actually 3.5 or something?
Yes, thank you for that question. Concept 2 had a, I believe what you're referring to that was reported was just for the construction. So the entire project cost would be probably over 3 million. So what was reported for concept 2 was just the construction cost estimate.
Well, I saw a side-by-side where option 2 was 2.9 and option 3, I think, was a little bit over 1 million. It's now grown to 2.5.
Yeah, that table that was presented for concept 3, the construction was reported at 1.9 million.
I'm sorry, 1.9, yes.
Yeah, and so with the project, with the design project delivery cost, so it's now up to 2.5. So for concept 2, I believe it was reported at 2.8 million, and so that was only for construction.
So that would also be more at this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had another question on timing. We're talking about the grant timing, but there was also the desire of neighbors to push the disruptive construction until after school is done. Is it possible to start the project in early 2023, as you said, I think March, in order to capture the grant, but not disrupt the safety of the bike lanes, I'm sorry, of the biking that's there now until school is out, and begin full construction, let's say in, May or June? Is that possible?
Well, yes, that's a very important consideration. And one of the reasons why we wanted to start the construction in the summer, or at least start the project and as much of the disruptive components during the summertime when the schools are out. We're estimating that this project would take about 6 months to construct, so it might not be all possible to avoid some of the disruptions completely, but we're definitely working to make sure we have a logistic and a phasing plan, so we have at least one side of the roadway available and minimize the impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I have a lot of thoughts. First of all, it's not on our agenda to change this project, right? We're just talking about the funding and moving forward.
Yes, Vice Mayor, the item was for the council to receive an update. There are a few other action items related to the project that we need your approval on, but for the design, it was to mainly receive an update. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so in my comments, I just want to make a couple observations. One is, this is a really good project, but we're starting with a location that is a road. It was built with only cars in mind. It's designed right now only for cars. It's 1 lane in each direction for cars, and the space on the sides is where people park their cars or service vehicles go. And the whole entire point of this project was to carve out a dedicated place for pedestrians, a dedicated safe place for cyclists, and a place for cars to drive. And, I want to commend staff because the amount of work and public outreach has been extraordinary, including having staff show up on a Saturday. A large number of staff show up on a Saturday for a community meeting. And I think this kind of engagement is essential. I think, this is what Los Gatos is about. There's a lot of hand-holding, there's a lot of listening to residents, there's been a lot of adaptation. But in the end, any kind of change is going to be hard. When you take something that is 100% dedicated to automobiles and you try to claw away some safe place for pedestrians and what we know is a safe, high-quality bike lane, there has to be some trade-offs, whether it comes from parking, whether it comes from a resident's perception that they were in the public right-of-way with greenery, and now there's a sense of loss if that public right-of-way is being taken back. And I'm not insensitive to that. I understand that. That's part of the reason why when we approved this project, when the residents objected to the green bollards, I made the motion that we preserve that buffer, but we look for a delineator in the future that is acceptable to the residents. I don't know what that will be or when that will be, but it's critical to me that we preserve that 3-foot space for a lot of reasons. One is it enforces a state law. We have to have 3 feet of space between a moving vehicle and a bicyclist. Second of all, there's trash collection day. That buffer is a perfect place for the garbage and the recycling bins to go. If we don't have that, people will trash the bike lane. And then the third reason is there are tons of studies. If you look up the willing but wary or the, considering but concerned, approximately 60% of all people fall into the biking mentality of they would bike, but it doesn't feel comfortable. And I think it would be absolutely irresponsible of us to wait for somebody to die on Shannon Road before we decide we have to have good bike lanes. We already had a huge outraged group of people when we had a beloved resident get killed on Highway 9 at Masal. And eventually we were able to get a safer crosswalk there. We had somebody killed on Blossom Hill Road, and we've had vehicles end up on the school lawn or other places with the speeding on Blossom Hill Road. We are not waiting for that. The whole point of this is safe passage for students and mode shift so that more people will bike. And we know that will absolutely happen. And we know that the best way to do that is with a Class 3 bike lane. And right now, if the residents can't accept the delineator to make it Class 3, we passed approval for a Class 2 bike lane with a buffer. The other thing I want to say is I've watched the staff work so hard on this. Originally, the planter strip was going to be between the sidewalk and the bike lane. That was the original plan. But residents did not want to have to pull out a lot of what they had planted on the right of way. And that's why the planter strip got switched over next to the residences. So then at that public meeting on the Saturday meeting, all of a sudden there were residents saying, the planter strip's in the wrong place, it needs to be here. This project can go on forever. We're never going to make everybody happy, but I think we've got a good design. We've already passed it. And I think we need to just move forward, get it right. There will be options later. If people really want green space, they may find out they don't need all the parking spaces and we can put all the trees we want where the parking spaces were. But right now to sit there and say green space and parking is the most important and compromise the safety of pedestrians and cyclists really feels backward to me. So I would like to move forward with the items on the agenda. Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion to that?
I would, if I can wake up my iPad again. Yes, so I move that, well, we've received the update. I don't need to make a motion on that, but I move to accept a transportation fund for clean air grant in the amount of $174,250 from the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. I move to authorize the town manager to execute a grant agreement with the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority for the Transportation Fund for Clean Air Funds. I move to authorize a revenue and expenditure increase for the project in the amount of $174,250 in fiscal year 2021-22 capital improvement program budget for the grant funds. And I move to authorize the town manager to execute a first amendment to the consulting service agreement with Active Ways Engineering for additional design services in an amount of $44,840 for a total agreement amount not to exceed $171,471. And then I would also want to authorize staff, to the extent that it doesn't add to the cost or change the project significantly, as there are little tweaks that come along and there's continued conversation with the residents to continue the good work that you've already been doing. Thank you.
So I have a motion. Would anybody like to second this item? Councilmember Sapp.
I'll second the motion for the reasons that have been so passionately already expressed by our Vice Mayor.
All right, that sounds good. Discussion, Councilmember Hudas. Oh, you're still muted.
Just want to make a comment that I do support the project. I believe most of the residents do. This is the classic case where we have to balance several interests. The interests of safety with the interests of the property owners who are directly affected with the interests of the greater town. And so it's a difficult project. We should not be frustrated that it's taking time to get it right. The other reason why I think it's important to listen to our residents and to try to get it right is that this is really our first collector street that we're making a major change on. And we have other ones that are coming up, including one we heard about earlier. So coming up with a model that works not only for the cyclists, not only for the residents, but balances the interests, I think is really important. And I would like to just go back to the meeting on that Saturday. If we hold a meeting on a Saturday, whenever, and we ask people to provide input, and then we say, too bad, no changes, we have to move on, that's not acceptable. So it has to, if you're going to ask for input, you have to be prepared to, again, take that input and then balance the interests. And if it can be done in time to still get the grant, and it can be done within a reasonable budget, then I think it's important to do that. The motion as it's been made, I actually have no problem with. It's the last part of that motion, which is that if changes can be made that are requested by the residents, I want to give some weight to that because it's very important that we get this right. And so if it is possible to do some of the things that were mentioned tonight, including eliminating that buffer between that second buffer, the one between the bike lane and the parking. That's not the 3-foot one between traffic, or to provide some trade-off so that we get more green by maybe eliminating some parking spaces. I think those would be good things. I think we'd be listening to our residents as we develop a model for how to do this right on collector streets throughout the town. So I would encourage staff to continue to listen, to continue to make changes as they hear them. And it is worth the time to take to do it. So I will actually support the motion, but I want to make the comment about why it's important to take input and to make changes as that input's provided.
Director Morley, you wanted to add something in here?
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarification, at the meeting on Saturday, we had great discussions with the residents. We were very clear at the beginning of the meeting that the input that we were going to take was all something that we were going to take seriously, and where it made sense and where it was possible, we were going to include it. But there was no promise or commitment to include everything that the residents were asking for. Since that time, there have been significant changes to the drawings to accommodate their desires where it made sense for the project. With respect to the buffer, just so that we're clear moving forward, the buffer is not something that staff can recommend giving up on. That's an integral part of the project from staff's perspective. So we will continue to listen to the public. I think that's extremely important. We'll continue to make tweaks to the project as it progresses. But giving up on integral parts of the project, it's just not something that staff can make a recommendation for. So we'll from our perspective keep that buffer in the project as we're working through the rest of the design with the staff. Council will see it again at 100% design as we're asking for authorization to bid the project, and that will be the final stop. So there is another opportunity for you to see the additional changes that we make between now and then.
Okay, Councilmember Badami, comments or possibly a question that just arose?
No, I'll just make a comment. It's not on our agenda to change this project at this point. I'm going to reluctantly support the motion with concern for the character of the neighborhood and with hope that staff will continue to engage with the residents and address their concerns in maintaining the look and feel, but maintaining safety as well. Thank you.
And I'll just make short comments. I was, before Mr. Morley spoke, I was going to say I didn't think you could easily change that buffer without major design changes, which, you know, I don't think we want to go there. That's kind of might torpedo the project. And I heard early on Mr. Kim say that, you know, they had made some changes since the Saturday. So I felt comfortable staff was making changes as much as possible. It sounds like the change that may still be possible, and it's not exactly part of the motion, but I would be okay with losing some of the parking. I think there was 12 parking spaces out there. It seems like it's more than that street needs. So again, you kind of indicated it's might be possible, still a little bit trouble to maybe throw a tree in between some of the parking and have a few less parking spaces. You know, I just give my feedback that I think less parking spaces and more trees, if we can fit it in without significant, you know, problems or changes, it sounds like something that everybody wants. You suggested that the neighbors maybe would be willing to take care of the trees. I'm sure they would. I don't, you know, you mentioned irrigation. I know we don't really need irrigation. You just need somebody to water it until they become established, or possibly the neighbors looking out for it. So I just add my support for the idea that fewer parking spaces might help the desires here. And Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have huge respect for the residents, and I have listened to them and talked to them. I think the trade-off is when this project came forward, it had maybe 5 parking spaces, and one of the messages that came through loud and clear from one group of residents said parking wasn't important, then parking became more important, then more parking spaces were added, then there's concern about green space. I even heard from one resident who was unhappy that the parking spaces were going to be in front of their house. So I think to the extent that staff has been, you know, trying to respond, there is not going to be one design that's going to make everyone happy. But, you know, to the extent that, yeah, if parking gets reduced, we know from nighttime numbers, we know from how much parking is utilized, that the amount of parking that's in there now is probably more than necessary. But I think it's easier to take parking away than to try to add back a buffer if we don't put it in or anything else. So I think it's important to leave those decisions to staff to figure out, but we need the critical safety features of this project. And, you know, so I think this can move forward.
So I think we're winding down. I'm going to go ahead and call the question, starting with Councilmember Hudes.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Risto,
Aye.
Councilmember Badami,
Aye.
Councilmember Sayat,
Yes.
and the mayor votes aye, so passes unanimously. That's the end of item number 11. Let's take a break until 9:30, and we'll come back for item 12 at 9:30. order here, and we're going to item number 12, which is the Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9 Trail Connector Funding Plan. We have a few action items here. I will turn it over to Ying Smith to give us a report.
Hey, Ying, your audio is not working.
Sorry. It's kind of motorboating. Like maybe it doesn't have enough bandwidth or something. Maybe turn off your video if you have to. It's not any better, unfortunately.
So Ying is going to switch devices and see if that will help her.
I can switch the order of the items too if she needs, and do 13 first if she needs more time to recover.
Looks like she also requested that Director Morley might want to start the PowerPoint and then she'll join in.
We can do that. So this won't be as polished as Ying is, but let's talk about the Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9 Trailhead Connector Funding Plan. And this comes about through a lot of effort by staff. On the screen now you see our project schedule and what we would hope to accomplish with this. Our hope is that by February of 2024, that we have a built project that gives us connection on both sides of Highway 9 at the Los Gatos Creek Trail near Highway 17. And that would be a great way to meet a need that is actually sort of met now by rogue trails, and we would make that more official. And the next slide, please. We have had a run at a number of grant applications in the past. There's been a lot of effort to fund construction for this particular project. Unfortunately, with the list that you see on the screen, we haven't been successful. And we hope to change that around. We have some things in the works, and largely that's because of the hard work that and the relationships that Ms. Smith has built through her connections throughout the county. Next slide, please. Ying, you might want to change your name too. So we have a number of sources that are coming our direction. The biggie that we've heard about recently is an estimated $2.4 to $3.3 million from OBAG. Pretty neat the way these funds came, and I talked about Ying's having a relationship with other folks that are her peers. And this came from a phone call from one of them that said that they had an opportunity to redirect funds our direction. They knew of this particular project, and they thought it was a great project that met the needs of these funds. And if we could obligate the funds this calendar year, and they knew that we're near completion on design of the project, that if we could obligate the funds this calendar year, they could help move them to our direction. The reason there's a bit of a gap there in the funds, 2.4 to 3.3, is because there's a couple potential sort of moving parts still at this point. There's one city who hasn't officially said that they won't be able to obligate the funds. If they actually come through as well, then it would be the 3.3. If they're able to obligate the funds, then it would be the lower amount. We're getting more and more confident as the days go by that it's headed towards the high side on that one, but we didn't want to commit to it fully. TFCA is another fund that has specific measures to it. And we think that applying for this grant would be, we'd have a more than optimistic chance of getting this one. So we're looking at another $1 million in grant funds for that. And Valley Water recently came forward with their Access to Trails grant. And that's a grant that we aren't as familiar with, but we think that there's some funding opportunities for us there. So we're counting the total grant allotment is 1.1. We're thinking that somewhere in between there are funds that that we could capture for our project. So that leaves a big pot of money that's grant dollars, which leaves us in a bit of a pickle, in that we have to have some town funds in the mix. And so we're looking at somewhere in the $300 to $1.5 million range. So there is some grant funds, some town funds that we'll have to come forward with, and we'll talk a little bit about the sources of those and what that might look like in a few seconds here. And with that, I think Ying is on board. So let's go ahead and transition back to Ying, and you can take it from here, Ying.
Thank you, Director Morley. Want to jump into the key considerations. We talk about there in the funding plan, there's some variables. One is whether we can be successful in all three grants, and each one has a different level of certainty we have. And the second one is how much we receive in each program. So that's why you see we have our best estimate in each program. That's why you see the three different scenarios. The second point to consider is the financial commitment. This is what we are asking the council to consider, is to make the commitment in all three programs to allow us to move to the next steps. The commitment is different from a budget appropriation. The commitment is what the grantors are requiring at this point. And so then they take the council's direction back to the decision-making bodies to consider appropriate actions. In terms of project delivery schedule, we start out with that. This project, the progress today is very important in us receiving the OBAC grant. And the timing is also important for each grant dollar, each grant program we receive. Not only we're looking at the dollar amount, we're also looking at the timing, how we align them properly and to fit the project's own schedule. So for a project this scale at $5.8 million, is for any agency, they will have to consider to get grant funding from multiple sources and leverage the grant funding with local dollars. So this is not different from what we're asking the town council to consider. At this point, staff believe this is a very reasonable funding plan. There are alternatives we identify in the staff report, and also the risk associated with delaying. So moving to staff recommendation, next slide, please. Staff it is recommending moving forward with this overall funding plan, as well as the individual actions associated with each program. So this slide summarizes the staff recommendations. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, I got to start off with the first question. You showed, well, when Mr. Morley was showing it, you showed a table where the numbers changed on us compared to our report. Town funds were less than $1 million. Now you're showing almost 1.5. And in your recommendation in the staff report, item A, you're talking about an amount up to 1 million. I assume you now want an amount up to 1.5 instead of 1 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, this table 2 is this. We're presenting the revised table, but we're not changing the staff recommendation.
So you're still asking for an authorization up to $1 million. And so that's, I'm guessing that's sort of a balance between, you think it's probably not really going to be 1.4. There's enough variables that it'll be closer to $1 million or less. And so at this point, you're comfortable with council just authorizing 1 million.
That's correct.
Okay, I think that's clear to me, hopefully to other council members. Any questions from council member before I go to the public? If not, I will go to the public, see if anybody wishes to comment on this item. Not seeing any hands raised, so I'll close the public comment and come back to council for questions and comments and a motion. Vice Mayor Risto.
Yeah, you probably can't answer the question. I mean, it's a big swing. If things are wildly optimistic, it looks like we're kind of on the hook for about $300,000. Otherwise, it's about $1 million. I mean, when I look at this project and how very, very expensive it is overall, the amount of grant money that you could bring in is amazing. But I mean, do you have a feeling for what our chances are? You know, in a second, I want this if it costs us $300,000. I maybe still want it for $1 million, but we are really strapped with CIP. So can you like lay out how we'll find out how this rolls out and what our chances are and what opportunities we might lose if we don't follow this?
In terms of the probability of getting each grant, it is in the order of what we listed. The OBAC grant is the largest one. It is the driver. If OBAC doesn't happen, we don't have a funding plan. So it is important for the council to make that commitment so we can move forward. In the next few weeks, a lot of things will unfold. For example, BTA staff has scheduled this item, their recommendation to the BTA board for the action to allocate the OBAC funding to the town, to this project at their April meeting. So in the next few weeks, and before that, the other city will make a decision on the so-called relinquishment of that roughly $900,000. So we see a lot of things happening. We are asking the council to make the commitment up to $1 million, but not more than that. That gives us opportunity if this funding plan kind of falls on the so-called low estimate. We will have another opportunity to bring some alternatives back to you for consideration.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for the energetic pursuit of these grants. And this can really make a difference to our community. The question I had is on the cost side of the estimate. How certain are we, or do we think there are still opportunities for some cost savings on the cost side of this by the time the grant goes through? And are we obligated to stick with our estimate because that's what we put into our grant proposal, or can we find ways to reduce cost after we receive grants?
As we show at the very first slide, the project progress, we are within a month or two in getting the final design done and environmental clearance. So at this point, the cost estimate, we have a high level of confidence with a small contingency. So the project cost could go up or down, but at this point, the project scope itself, how we define the project, is not going to change in terms of the funding programs we're looking at. So we say the $5.8 million is really based on a very high level, very advanced level of design work. So we're very confident in that dollar. Of course, as I think our town engineer, Vijay Kim mentioned, we definitely will look for opportunities to look for cost savings as we wrap up the design.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm looking for a motion. Would somebody like to go ahead? Councilmember Sapp.
Okay, thank you. I know this is a project. I know we have several items on our CIP, but this is a project that we have been trying to chip away at, and I'm excited to see it progressing. So based on our optimism and our continued fingers crossed, I move that we receive the OBEG grant and commit town funds in an amount up to $1 million to leverage grants in completing the funding plan for the construction phase of the project. I move that we authorize the town manager to submit a grant application to Santa Clara VTA in the Transportation Fund for Clean Air Program. And I move that we adopt a resolution authorizing an application in Valley Water Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Vice Mayor Risto?
Thank you. Having watched this project for a while and being very hopeful that this goes through, I second the motion.
And I will support the motion. I realize, you know, as our finances get tighter, $1 million is kind of a big number, but we're actually leveraging basically 5 to 1. So I'm you know, that's kind of amazing, and I certainly wouldn't want the opportunity to go by, especially considering all the work we've put into this project. So I'll definitely be supporting it. If there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and call the question. Councilmember Sayak?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Risto?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudes?
Aye.
Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye, passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. So that takes us on to our last agenda item, item number 13, which will be a discussion of the CIP, of which we've just spent some.
Yeah, great segue from one item to the next. I do have a short PowerPoint for us on this one. I think Arn's getting that queued up for us. This item is a discussion on the capital improvement program leading into our next year's budgeting opportunity. So I wanted to spin a couple of ideas through and really get some feedback from the council as we start to look for our budgeting for this coming year. Next slide, please. So through the presentation, I'd like to review the CIP. We have some short-term project needs. I'd like to go over those. I'd like to review our deferred capital needs and then look to your guidance. Next slide, please. In August, I presented to you these charts for each of our projects. They continue to be updated on our website. So anytime you want to look at them, they're at losgatosca.gov/CIP. You can take a look at those anytime. We'll try and keep those updated on a fairly regular basis. Probably 3 times a year, we'll get these updated and current for you. So they're a great way to see projects sort of visually in a snapshot, and a tool for us to use in conjunction with our budget document. Next slide, please. At the very front of the CIP page, you'll see some counts of where we are with our projects in terms of some categories that we have for them, and then some sort of red, yellow, green, how projects are faring from a funding status. So red being projects that aren't funded well, yellow being projects that are sort of at risk, and green being those that are in good shape. So the good news is we have a high number in the green section. We do have a few in the red, and there's more in the red now than there were in August due to project changes and funding changes. And I want to talk about a few of those high-profile projects next. So these are the projects with the funding needs. I'm going to go through them one at a time and talk about the project and why there are funding needs for them. So the Highway 17-9 interchange and capacity improvements is our rebuild of the interchange at Highway 9 and 17. The number is small right now, $787,000 as our general fund needs. We really, the council previously committed to these dollars because Measure B has committed $7.8 million in design dollars to this project. So we have great traction moving this forward through the highways program in Measure B. And if you remember, the highways program was something that the town lobbied hard for to have inclusion of the town specifically. And we actually have line items called out to the town. So for that money to actually be coming to the source is really a big win. Now, this is a huge project, and it's going to take a lot of additional work to get it built. So this gets us through the design phase. And the 780 is our local match portion of that. We're going to have a $100 million plus construction project when we get done. That's way too much for us to contemplate funding on our own, obviously. And frankly, even too much for us to consider a 10% match on. So we'll need to discuss strategies on this project as it moves forward. It's still got some time on the design, so we're not pressed on that side. But we'll need to talk about some strategies on state level conversations that we need to have in order to help funding flow our direction. And there are big funding sources, as you know, that are coming from the federal government that would fund exactly these kinds of projects. We just need to have our voice heard at the right time for those. The next project is a corporation yard building replacement. This is a project that's been ongoing. As you may remember, we did a tenant improvement to move our engineering staff and our maintenance staff into one space so that we consolidated our occupied spaces and went to more structured storage spaces for equipment. We bid this project recently, and at our next March meeting, we'll bring back a rejection of those bids to the council. We had actually just one bid come in that was significantly over budget. Our proposed plan that we'll bring to you in March is to redo the drawings a little bit, do some additional value engineering on that project to reduce scope and cost, to pull out some of the demolition of the old building that's falling apart, so that we can control the costs on that and get cut off some dollars on the expenses. But even with that, because construction costs have escalated so high, so fast, we think that we need another $600,000. Something that I think from my probably biased opinion, we can't do without. This is really what supports the operations of the Public Works Department out in the field and the Parks Department out in the field doing maintenance. In addition to that, it provides critical warehousing for police evidence storage. So we have some critical functions that this provides. So some additional funds that I'm asking that we look to set aside there. We have our Shannon Road biking improvements. Luckily, this one that we talked about earlier tonight has a funding plan, and we've addressed that. And so we have the plan set aside. So I'm not asking for any consideration for general fund dollars, but I wanted to note it as a project that we're continuing to move dollars around to support that project. So as projects need funds, we are looking for creative alternatives to help fund them, to bring options to you where we have options. The Shannon Road repair is the work at the top of Shannon Road where the roadway is failing. Overall, it's over $1 million, but because we're already in on design with our own money, we have about $4.5 million of construction dollars needed left. We'll continue to refine that scope, the scope and the dollars on that project as we get towards final design. But that's a significant chunk of dollars that the town's going to need to have a solution for. As you know, we continue to monitor that roadway. It's been holding up this through this winter. Fortunately, in one way, fortunately, it's been a dry winter, and so that hasn't caused additional significant deterioration. And we'll continue to do treatments to the cracks and the pavement there to maintain that roadway. But we'll need a solution on this one ultimately to fund reconstruction there. The Los Gatos Creek Trail Connector project is the one we just now finished, and so we can count this one with a commitment at this point. So of the available dollars, we've committed $1 million essentially on that project. And then the next two projects are projects that are coming your direction, and I wanted us to be prepared for discussion on those. The Blossom Hill Road Traffic Safety Project is the project right in front of Blossom Hill School. We figured this project as a great grant opportunity. We have an estimated $1 million price tag on construction there. We're factoring in our match of $100,000 and planning on grant dollars as yet unidentified for $1 million. So this is one that's coming our direction, and we just need to have this as we're looking at at future projects and future commitments of dollars as something that we have on our list. And then similar to the Shannon Road project, we have on the next parallel road over the Kennedy Road sidewalk and bike lane construction project, much smaller scope project, but we'll need some construction dollars for that one as well. And we're estimating that at $400,000. Again, another project that's early in design, so we'll refine that as we go. And we don't necessarily need to be all in committing on that one now, but we wanted that one as a significant project for us that is going to make a big difference to the community. We want to have the available funds identified for that one. So long-winded, I know, but we wanted to go through each of those so you were grounded on the projects that we have coming forward. Next slide, please. On to other needs. So we have some deferred capital maintenance needs, and I wanted to hit each of these individually. On the facility side, we've had an assessment done of all of our town facilities to identify year by year what our anticipated capital needs are for those facilities. This becomes a big number, and the overall number becomes a big number. So I wanted to break it down just a little bit more so that we can digest it and attack it in smaller bits. On the facility side, we need about $8.6 million over 5 years. So a smaller dollar amount, a little bit easier to deal with. And I have a little breakdown as an attachment to the staff report, and wanted to make sure that you understood that this is made up of individual items. So our consultant went through the facilities and identified every mechanical unit that needed to be replaced, every heater, every toilet that was going to fail, all the elements, and came up with this number. So these are real numbers I think that we should anticipate needing to do. Now, what happens if we don't? I think we continue to see failure in our equipment. The most recent one that we've had to scramble to solve has been some heating units that the council appropriated some dollars through mid-year process, I believe, at the adult rec center, where we weren't able to control the heat at the adult rec center. So they're uncomfortable for a period of time. And those are the impacts that we see for not being able to proactively address these needs. On the stormwater infrastructure side, there's $15 million in identified projects that we need to address. And these are projects where we have known issues with our infrastructure. Now, we continue to find small projects here and there and address those with maintenance crews to the extent we can. And these are a little bit bigger projects that we'd like to be able to move forward with. These may actually be the easiest to fund, and we can talk about that. The most obvious solution is working with our clean water program and tying together a clean water program fee associated with capital infrastructure and looking for resident support of an additional assessment of some sort to be able to move this forward. The great news here is we have a willing partner in the clean water program that could help us move that forward, and potential interest in other jurisdictions as well. So we could have a really focused campaign to make something like this happen. So this is a funding opportunity that the council might want to entertain for the near future to help solve some of the problems. And as you know, the clean water program itself has unfunded mandates that we're struggling with. Pavement maintenance, we continue to hover right around the 69 PCI level. 69 is sort of the fair level. We'd like to target a 75. 75 is a sweet spot for a PCI from our perspective, where it starts to make our roads all look in reasonably good condition and helps with the ongoing maintenance costs. It's cheaper to maintain a road in good condition than a road that's in poor condition. So this gets us over a hump. It's a 5-year need of $14 million or $2.7 million more per year. So another big number for us to wrestle with, but wanted it out there as a target. So from staff's perspective, 75 is a great target. Now the hard work finding the funds to make it happen. And the ADA transition plan is the last element that is just starting to wrap up. We have work that is ongoing, so that the dollars are going to climb slightly more on this one. We do have about $1 million a year need if you spread this cost over 25 years. And that's what a transition plan could typically be, is a 25-year plan to become compliant. An ADA transition plan is all deficiencies. So these aren't things that we expect to go wrong. These are things that are actually wrong today. But there isn't a requirement that we fix them all at once. We can have the plan to fix them over time. One of the things that I wanted to call out, we've had a discussion previously about a parking lot ADA pilot program for doing signage and outreach and trying to rework how van accessible spots are used in parking lots. There's $375,000 in just parking lot accessible needs in our ADA study. So there's high needs in just basic stuff like paint, signs, making sure the slope is right on parking spots and on ramps and that kind of a thing. So our recommendation is not to pursue a pilot when we have concrete elements in place that we really need to catch up on and make a commitment to becoming compliant with. Next slide, please. There is a significant list of unfunded projects that we provided as an attachment to the report. I just did a little tear off from it here, but you have that entire list. This list is derived from commissions, from council, from staff, from residents, and we continue to maintain this list. We rank it with numbers in the left column. The numbers aren't in ranked order, but more categorically. So the number ones are sort of big safety issues that we think need to be addressed. The number twos are economic vitality issues. We don't happen to have any of those now, but we did in the years past, and so on. So these are sort of a way for us to track ongoing requests of needs for the town. It's a long list of big items. We keep this list in mind when we're looking for things like grant opportunities. So there's times where an item that might be further down this list might pop up because we have a grant that could help move it along and get it funded. So that's a situation where maybe a priority 4 item would actually pop to the top of the list and be something that we could take on. I will also point out that on this list we have the Los Gatos Almaden Road corridor as something that has some need with a big dollar amount associated with it, but no identified funding at this point. Next slide, please. So this is where I sort of stop. I wanted to check in on the priorities, help focus on some of those immediate needs and see if we can move some funding forward on those. Continue the conversation on the deferred capital maintenance and get your guidance from for this coming CIP as we start to build it. So our opportunity to hear from you where you want to commit the dollars that we have, the limited dollars that we have. And I think as I identified in the staff report, there are some dollars that we anticipate, a total of $2,500,000 that remain from our previous balance. $1.5 million that we would expect at the end of this fiscal year, and then $500,000 from the committed Measure G funds that the council has identified go to capital projects. So a small amount for some bigger needs, and I'm available to support the conversation.
All right, questions before we go to public? Councilmember Badami.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Morley. I'm trying to swallow 75 million in deferred capital maintenance. I find it staggering. Can you elaborate on the town employing a run to failure model? I need to understand that.
Yeah, so it's something that when you have old infrastructure isn't uncommon, and I've had it in previous places as well. And deferred capital maintenance is something that is very easy to fall into and very difficult to climb out of. So in tight times, you start looking for things that you can use duct tape to keep going, and ultimately those things fail, and you have to replace them. It happens in all kinds of things. It happens with, we feel it most with big equipment, with boilers, with heating exchange units like we did at the Adult Rec Center, with water lines, things like that, where when they fail, it has a direct impact to the tenants. But you also see it in things like carpet and paint, and staff areas and cubicles and that kind of a thing, where I think things get really worn over time, and the doors that don't operate, that don't have the pull strength, that things like that grow over time. So not unusual for us to have that. I tried to break it down to smaller amounts, and if we ever have a funding opportunity, we love to be able to start addressing these. And it may also play into some of your thoughts as you look towards the future of some of our infrastructure and what we do with that, whether it's continuing to maintain it or looking for new opportunities. I will say that the three biggest pieces of three biggest assets that make up that list dollar-wise are the Adult Rec Center, the Civic Center, obviously because of its age and the amount of equipment there and the size of it, and our brand new theater, which still had a significant amount of need over the next 5 years to keep that functioning and going. I think the theater is a good example because we're going to have a higher level of service at that particular facility. So we're going to need to start accounting for keeping that one I think in good shape and keeping it at the quality that it's intended, I think, to be run at.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you, I think. First of all, Director Morley, I want to commend you on your incredibly chipper demeanor while you deliver like staggeringly depressing news. A couple things. One, and I mean, this is somewhat rhetorical, but for the Highway 17-9 interchange, I mean, none of that is Los Gatos. That's 100% Caltrans. Why do we have to provide any kind of match for an improvement there? I mean, I think I know the answer because Caltrans just doesn't care and wouldn't do it if we didn't have skin in the game, but none of it is under our jurisdiction.
None of it's under our jurisdiction, but the idea is, I believe, and I think you nailed it with Caltrans would not address this project if it weren't for us being a local champion. And that's the same. We're treated the same as every other jurisdiction in the state. You know, that if you want to interchange to advance and you want the improvements to the town that come with that, then there needs to be a local champion to help make that happen. Some of that becomes because Caltrans doesn't want to start a project and run into opposition, and some of it comes from the sheer number of locations that Caltrans has statewide. They're looking for something that's got some energy behind it, so they're looking for us to help carry it. There is significant benefit to the town, and we've looked at this as helping to smooth some of the traffic issues that we have, make some of the safe merges happen, to provide bike and pedestrian access across the Highway 17. So there is some benefit to the town. I do think that we need a strategy for the future on what we do for state level conversations. There's a local resident who is on the State Transportation Commission that we should probably be leveraging. We have our state politicians that we should probably have some conversations with along the way, if it's the council's desire to continue to move this project and to advance it aggressively.
Okay, great. That's important for us to know, and what role we can play, because just for the design phase, that's a somewhat large amount. The other question, somewhat rhetorical, but not completely unreasonable from my perspective, is, Shannon Road, is there some way we can prevent that from degrading faster? I mean, for example, because I bike all over the place, there are roads that either have a stop sign at each end, and I realize that Shannon is too long to have one lane in each direction with a stop sign because of the sight lines, or something signalized, and buy more time, probably a significant amount of time, by just creating that section to be one lane in each direction?
I think the short answer is yes. We can do and I think we are continuing to do maintenance efforts that would help to retain that roadway. Unfortunately, I don't think it's necessarily as much vehicle weight as it is sort of the infiltration of weather and the fact that it's naturally sliding. So the structure underneath isn't holding that roadway up. The roadway wasn't built on bedrock; it was built on fill, and that's what's causing it to continue to fail. So I don't think just by having vehicles drive on it, I don't think we solve the problem. Maybe extend it a little bit. Typically, the stop signs on either side are signalized roadway is used where there's a failure or an imminent failure where the roadway is actually not drivable, not wide enough. So I don't know that we're at that point yet, but that may be an option ultimately, as we are trying to save dollars over the years, is for us to start to sort of narrow that roadway and maybe go to a one-lane thing if it fails more significantly.
Okay, thank you. I mean, $4.5 million, I think any way we can buy time makes sense.
We also have a development that will be occurring there, potentially, I guess I should say, and there may be some cost sharing that we need to look at with that development ultimately when that project comes along.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sayek.
Thank you. Two questions. The first to Director Morley. It is staggering, and it is amazing how chipper you are. In the past, you have been able to guide the council in looking at it in almost like themes. I remember one year we focused on Almond Grove, and then the next year we focused on PCI. Based on everything here, what theme would you like us to focus on? Because ultimately, I think it's a great reminder to everyone in the community that we have unlimited funds. I think we've always talked in the past about the one or two projects that we look at independently and don't look at the cumulative look at our expenses. But how would you, if you were to look at this and we wanted to just take a big chunk and make an impact with the biggest ROI, do you have recommendations on how to look at this?
So I'm looking at it from my perspective in short-term needs, and so identify those projects specifically. And so I think those projects pretty much tap out our funds for our available funds for next year, and maybe then some. So any guidance you have on those projects and how to fund those would be welcome. As far as moving forward after that, I think it's a couple conversations. One is what resonates with the council. What are your priorities? So is ADA compliance more important than pavement, PCI? So and you can make an argument either way, right? So we need to be doing some work on the ADA. Do we do a lot of work up front, or do we continue to spread it out over time? Pavement increasing the PCI saves us money in the long run because the maintenance costs decrease. So we're able to maintain that higher level of service at a lesser cost ultimately. So that's a nice part about maintaining something. And that PCI is really evident in the way that occurs. But that's the same for all capital investments. If you do run to failure, then you're reacting, and the expenses increase on making that happen. Plus, you've got maintenance costs over time for keeping things sort of duct taped together. And I guess I should say I recognize that the numbers are extremely large numbers and really sort of incomprehensible in terms of dealing with them all at once. There is some deferred capital maintenance I think that we could identify on the facility side that we could put some dollars to, and if that's a priority for you, we can even bring back a report to talk about a little bit about what the needs are in each facility and what those dollars might be. There's some upfront costs that really start to make sense for us to address on the facility side. But again, if we're going to short term use the dollars for those high priority projects, then maybe there's not a need on the facility side. Maybe that's a different conversation about future funding opportunities and how we solve it in a bigger way. And then stormwater infrastructure, I think I provided the opportunity there with looking at some other sort of fee assessment in order to help us achieve some of our needs there. And that's a whole process. It's a voter process, so we'd have to put that together and move it forward. Like I said, we have some resources, I think, with the Clean Water Program to help us with that.
Okay. And my second question through the mayor, and I don't know who wants to answer it, but I know is the Finance Commission looking at this? Because it's ultimately a long-term financial commitment the town has to make. And so I know it's been talked about and been placed on agendas, but if someone could just give me some reassurance that someone else is looking at this from a financial aspect as well.
Thank you for the question, council member. So similar to what happened last year, the Finance Commission will get a very similar report from Director Morley on the 18th of this month. They tend to, however, look at it in the aggregate as opposed to project oriented. I think Director Morley is really giving the council an appreciation for all the different components of the projects. The Finance Commission will really start to look at what funding sources are available, what funding opportunities are available. And so similar to last year, they'll start that discussion as part of their budget deliberations and ultimate recommendations to the council in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. So we can't make them go get us money?
So I will say the council continues to remind the Finance Commission that a strategic priority is looking at revenue measures. And so to a certain degree, you have given them some guidance.
Okay, thanks.
I take it we can't just add baling wire to the duct tape to make it go longer?
We're doing that too, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to working with the Finance Commission. We have some folks on that Finance Commission who have raised actually billions of dollars. And so it would be great to tap into their brain power about how we deal with this, this kind of issue. And I'm looking forward to that very much. I was just trying to tie this back to strategic priorities, and there were two of them that I didn't really see directly addressed. One of them had to do with implementation of the Dixon parking, and that to me ties directly to economic recovery. And as things get busier downtown, it's going to become more urgent. I know we've started with some sort of operational aspects of the parking signage, but it seems as though to even implement phase one of the Dixon report takes capital expenditure to get into real wayfinding. Have we begun to estimate that, and are we looking at that, because that one does relate to our recovery and potentially could be tied to ARPA funds as well?
A great question, and I believe we'll be talking with you about our parking, the progress on our parking report at our next meeting. We did set aside an additional $400,000 in this year's budget to help with the wayfinding signage. So we have dollars to get us moving on that. Once we have a final program, we'll be able to hone the total cost needed for that program and be able to have that discussion with the town council. But we think 400 is a great place for us to start and to get moving with that. So from a funding perspective on getting that going, we're in a good spot. We are looking, so a couple of things that we're looking at sort of as a preview to our 2 week from now discussion. The wayfinding signage is obviously critical and what we're pushing forward with now. And you'll actually, I think, see some pictures and be able to touch and feel some stuff before the next meeting. The other element is pay for parking, which is another way for us to manage where people are parking and how long they're parking. With that comes a revenue stream. So that will help define what we can do additionally in the future. And we also have revenue that's coming in, if you recall, from our Tesla lease to Tesla for the parking spaces for the charging stations in the north lot. So we have some dollars that are coming in. So we wanted to be able to put all of that together for the conversation. So I think that's coming to you, and that's why the Dixon report's not on this particular list. We also have some difficult conversations, probably about what level of wayfinding signage we have. So right now we're looking at static signage. We are definitely planning for signage that has that's digital or electronic in some way. That brings a different kind of project with it, a big public works project where we start to trench and dig and move things around. And if we're doing that to the sidewalks in the downtown now, what does that mean for a future streetscape project if that actually happens, and how do we coordinate that? So we will need to talk with the council about sort of order and what we do now and what we save for later and disruptions and how much we want. So all of that stuff needs significant council input and guidance for staff before we're able to pull the trigger on that. So all good things coming forward, but I think the main point is we are moving forward in a pretty good pace, I think, on the wayfinding signage. So I think you'll be happy in a couple of weeks when you see that report.
Great. I think, once we start to see some price tags attached to the electronic wayfinding, and remember, that was all part of phase one.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for us to understand what that is, because that will tie to economic recovery very much. There was one other thing, if I may, and that's one of the other strategic priorities related to the cut through traffic. And I know that we don't have much of a plan or a project at this point, but would it be possible for our CSTC to begin work on what solutions might be available, perhaps engaging with some of the Google and Apple engineers who live here in town? Because just saying we can't do anything, I don't think is an option. I know we can't do anything overnight, but the reason I bring it up is it's not just a convenience issue, and we can't just ask people to get out of their cars and walk, because it impacts fire safety. We have people in the hillsides, and that the high fire danger days are the same as the beach cut through traffic days, and we'll have a disaster if people are impeded and can't find their way because there's a logjam and gridlock. So I know CSTC is focused mostly on bicycle and ped. I was happy to see that they prioritized public transit, but it seems to me that that's the right group to begin thinking about real solutions for cut through traffic. And some of that, I think, will end up as a capital need if we're going to make a difference there. And like I say, it's not just convenience.
I think it probably warrants some additional discussion if you have ideas on what the real projects are, the real efforts are for cut through traffic. I'd like to hear those. I think I've spent 8 years working on it. I've talked with folks fairly high up at Google, had them to the town to chat with us. The response has been pretty clear on what they can and what they won't do. Certainly happy to engage with them again. I don't know that there's a success there for CSTC without some guidance on what you'd like them to explore more specifically and what we'd like to achieve there. Always willing to take on new ideas. I'm not a person that says no. I love opportunities to address this, to make little changes. I think our little changes have gone a long way where we've been able to make them. Unfortunately, the town is pretty leaky, so fixing things in a big way just hasn't been something we've been able to come up with.
Yeah, well, I think there is work going on in other communities across the state, and I think that we need to put some brain power in town behind this issue before we have a major, a safety and life situation. There's also some potential legislative solutions as well, but it does seem like that's part of CSTC, and that would be the place to get started. And then the last thing I had was on the ADA parking, and I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or you want me to hold that for a few minutes.
At your call, I think I'm fine with the discussion now.
Yeah, so I've had some continued meetings with some of our disabled wheelchair community, and I don't think that project belongs as a capital project at this point. I think it, understanding the scope of what could be done and needs to be done, they have some ideas, And there are also some regional and national organizations that are interested in working with us on this. I also listened to the audio of the CSTC meetings where it was discussed. And I've received some actual letters from some of these advocate organizations that are interested in us doing something. After reviewing all of it, I believe there is merit to proceeding with something, but not as it's described here in the staff report. First, I don't believe the scope is really as much as what's described in the staff report. I think they're asking for something much more modest. And for that reason, I don't think that it's a capital project. The scope is small, and a pilot of its own is rarely something that can be capitalized from an accounting perspective, because it doesn't result in an asset that's being put into service. It's a trial, it's a test. So I don't even think it belongs in the capital discussion. But I would hope that staff would be willing to meet with members of our disabled community to explore how a small scale effort could be made. And while there is an element of transportation to it, I think completely delegating it to the CSTC misses the point that there are elements of community health, senior living, and diversity and equity that are part of what could be addressed by working with this community. So I don't think pushing it back to CSTC would get progress on it. And so I would again suggest maybe a meeting with our disabled community and working to see if we can come up with something that is small and but can make a difference and would be supported potentially by some national organizations. So I'm not going to push for it to be on the list. I just would hope that we could continue to make an effort and work with our disabled community who's in wheelchairs.
Okay, can I move on to Councilmember Badami? Been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I'm going back to that 75 million. When I read the solutions from staff, it points to taxes, taxes, and more taxes. I don't like taxes, but I dislike failure even more. So what is the process for an analysis of a tax proposal? And is that something that could go to the Finance Commission for input and consideration?
So that's the direction that I was thinking this conversation might go is, you know, how do we solve this problem? What are the options? I think funding solutions like taxes or property assessments of some sort, which I guess is also a tax, would be one way of doing that. And I think it's something that council may want to consider given the magnitude of the dollar. And I think Assistant City Manager Andrews probably has a little bit more information on this than I do. And if you'd like to contribute, please do.
Thank you. And really not too much more to add, but you know, earlier Director Morley commented that if there were a way to create a revenue stream for parking, well, once you create a revenue stream and you can show a history of that revenue stream, then you can bond against it. And so not only is there a revenue component, but then there's the potential of getting capital up front for some of the other deferred maintenance. And then Director Morley was talking, you know, more along the lines of creating a new annual revenue stream through a partial tax or something of that nature, which would create that kind of ongoing funding that the CIP program in Los Gatos has never really had.
Could we categorize that type of tax and kind of lump it in with our other financial issues, such as the pension and OPEB funding deficits?
So you raise a good point. You know, the town has several areas of what you would recall, you know, deferred liabilities, maintenance and roadways a lot of times run under the radar, and folks don't realize that that is a major asset of the town, and it comes with major deferred maintenance, especially for a community our age. if you look at our facilities, whether it's the Civic Center, whether it's LGS Rec, these are older facilities, which are going to come with higher ongoing maintenance costs. And so, that's when communities make a decision that if they want a newer facility like the library, you can do geo bonding for that. You can do geo bonding for certain capital projects, but it has to be very shovel intensive. You can't just do slurry seal and cape seal for PCI with geo bonds. You have to actually dig things up pretty significantly. So those options are out there. I think on the pension front, the council to date has actually taken some pretty bold moves in that direction, over 10 million in additional discretionary payments. And then on the OPEB front, earlier at our pension and OPEB meeting, we're probably at one of the higher funding ratios for OPEB in the state. And so, similar to the conversation earlier, I believe it was Councilmember Sayak that said, okay, Director Morley, what theme should we be looking at? So the council did the theme of pension liabilities for a while. And so now it might be time to pivot and look at other deferred, liabilities and start to think about how we're going to address that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sayak.
I guess when I asked, it was jokingly, but when I asked, can the Finance Commission get us some money? I want it to be all encompassing. And if that includes a bond, a tax, I think that has to come back to us for further consideration. So for our Finance Commission members, please think big, because these are big price tags. But one thing that Director Morley did mention, and I want to go back to this one, is utilizing our contacts, our state legislators, as well as our assembly members. So what would be helpful, Director Morley, could you give us the top 2 priority talking points so that when we come across any of our legislators and they say, well, what can we do to help you? That all 5 of us have the same talking points again and again and again.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I think, I think we had talked about a legislative policy through the chair of the policy committee, but maybe this is something that we incorporate. What are just the top 5 you want us to say ad nauseum when people ask how they can help us? So.
If I could respond briefly to the big $75 million number and how overwhelming that is. So, sometimes addressing these big numbers is best handled like sort of the proverbial eating an elephant, right? Take it one bite at a time. So what can you pull out of it? What is something that you can get over the goal line that starts to whittle away at that? And so that a lot of times that happens in ways that, so you look at what resonates with the residents or what is easy to do. So the stormwater there might be an option there with our partners on stormwater to pull apart that little bit. And so you're addressing a small portion, but now you've got that handled and you can look at something else. Other things that resonate well with locally typically are sort of potholes and fire, right? So both things that could have funding opportunities to start to carve off a little bit and make a significant dent ultimately when you put a couple of these things together in creating a solution that helps the town to be viable in the long term.
So I don't think I ever opened public comment on this item unless somebody can tell me I did. So I'm going to open public comment at this time and see if any members of the public wish to address us. Don't see anybody interested in speaking at this time. I'll close the public comments. You asked about themes. So what I see is we're in the middle of the next theme, which is the bicycle and pedestrian, if you look at where all of our current is, right? So I would say that is our current theme, bicycle and pedestrian. We've got several projects going there. The next theme I would think about and try to be the most wise with our money is working on those items that if you do them early, they save you money in the long run. We know streets are one of those. If we keep them, a given street above a PCI of, I don't know what it is, 70 or something, then it's easier to take care of. We let it get down into disrepair and it becomes exponentially more expensive. So we've been doing that some on the streets. I wouldn't mind doing more, but I have to ask the question, where are the other places? We haven't had the conversations in our other deferred maintenance. Where are the other places that we could be spending those dollars now that would save us exponential dollars later on? You probably don't have the answer off the top of your fingers, but we've been doing this facilities assessment so that it must be available to you. So, those would be some of the things I would want to maybe ask the Finance Commission to look into a little bit more. I would think that would be one of the things they would say is wise to do, is what's the best way, where's the best place to spend money now so that we spend much less money later on, kind of thing.
So I think the streets is the obvious one. Facilities, certainly a portion of the facilities capital renewal would help with that, as well as we make the systems more efficient, especially those that use energy. So there's great opportunities there. So we can certainly look at that as we're bringing forward any budget proposals that we may be able to squeak out. I'm not imagining a lot of proposals, a lot of investment proposals this coming CIP. I think we're pretty committed, but to have something that we can chip away at might be helpful.
Okay, so I'm assuming that you've gotten enough input from the council. This is really just have a discussion and provide input. So you've been getting some input. Would any council members like to give any other input before we end this agenda item? Doesn't look like it. I can see lots of people ready for bed. So I'll go ahead and end this agenda item then, which ends all of our agenda items for the council. So I will say goodnight and adjourn the meeting.